Chapter 9:27. The cloud sail belongs to our sect. The old man must take it back. What a joke. It's true that the cloud sail belongs to Songhai Laozu, but if the cloud sail belongs to your Songhai sect, why didn't Songhai Laozu leave the cloud sail in Songhai sect? Tian Shui Laozu's words made East Pole Laozu speechless. Songhai Laozu only left the sea transfer token and the thin water-flowing sword in Songhai sect, but the Songhai bell and the cloud sail didn't. This was also the reason why the cultivators of the Songhai sect were somewhat indignant. But what really made the Songhai sect feel ashamed was the fact that Songhai Laozu was actually from the giant whale clan of the demon clan. This secret was originally known only to a few high-level cultivators of the Songhai bell. After it was leaked by Demon King Kong Jing, the entire Songhai bell was filled with a gloomy atmosphere. At this time, the cultivators of the Songhai sect suddenly realized why Songhai Laozu rarely returned to the Songhai sect after the Songhai sect was established, why Songhai sect never knew the location of Songhai Laozu's cave residence, and why Laozu didn't leave all the treasures in Songhai sect, except for the sea transfer token and the thin water-flowing sword. The reason was probably that Songhai Laozu never had any sense of belonging to the Songhai sect, which regarded him as the founder of the sect, Laozu. In any case, the cloud sail and the thin water-flowing sword belong to our sect. Our sect must take them back. Tian Shui Laozu glared at him and immediately scolded, "East Pole old fart, do you want to rob it? Bring it on. If you want to rob the things in my grand disciple's hands, I won't scold you for being shameless. Just step over my dead body." East Pole Laozu opened his mouth and was about to say something, but his eyes were suddenly filled with horror. The cultivators from the various sects behind him let out cries of despair. Tian Shui Laozu retreated to where the island's protective formation disk was. There was an explosion in the sky as Tian Fan Laozu shook off the Jade Azura and staggered towards Frost Island. From afar, where the sea and the sky met, 3 fleeting lights came together. One of the fleeting lights was shining gold. Wasn't it the Jade Shura that had chased after Xiang Lu ancestor earlier? There were 2 other lights on the left and right of the golden one. They were also 2 Jade Shura. For Jade Shura, how could there be 4 Jade Shura? Lu Ping's true Yuan had dyed the top of the cloud rock's head. Only the 2 golden eyes were still emitting a cold and intelligent light. Although Lu Ping had put all his energy into refining the cloud sail, he could still see the situation around him. Originally, East Pole Laozu's sudden attack had caused Lu Ping to break out in cold sweat. However, the 3 lights that streaked across the sky had caused Lu Ping to turn pale with fright. At this moment, the 4 blood demons seemed to have received some kind of order. They actually abandoned the collapsing devil cultivators and joined hands to attack the spirit stone mine in the center of Frost Island. At the same time, the 4 blood Shura that were attacking Jinling abandoned the island's protective formation that Jinling was guarding and turned to attack the spirit stone mine in the center. Mara's army that was attacking Jinling immediately retreated like the tide. They turned and surged towards the center of the spirit stone mine. It was obvious that Mara's army was staking everything on one throw and taking the risk to snatch the spirit stone mine. East Pole Laozu shouted, "Oh no!" He could not be bothered to argue with Tian Shui Laozu anymore. He turned around and fled towards the formation. At the same time, he shouted, "If the formation is broken, Jinling will not be able to get his share of the spirit stone mine." Tian Shui Laozu cursed in a low voice. What a despicable person! Although Jinling had almost escaped from the combined defense of the North Sea sects to protect his own medium-sized spirit stone mine, that large-scale spirit stone mine was still one of the foundations of the North Sea's cultivation world. In the end, those top-grade spirit stones could only be produced in large quantities in large-scale spirit stone mines. Medium-grade spirit stones could not be produced in large-scale spirit stone mines. With Mara besieging the center of the formation, Jinling could not just stand by and watch. Furthermore, the current Mara looked like a cornered dog that would do something desperate. Otherwise, he would not have exposed himself to Jinling so easily. When the 4 blood devils joined hands to attack the center of the formation, with a thought from Lu Ping, the cloud sail expanded once again. The cloud light directly covered a small portion of the formation, blocking a small portion of the attack from the 4 blood devils. And because Lu Ping had forcefully controlled the cloud sail, the cloud rock's spiritual light suddenly dimmed. Lu Ping took the opportunity to speed up the refinement. The purplish-blue Jin Yuan immediately entered the cloud rock's eyes. Lightning shot out from the cloud rock's eyes. On the surface of the cloud sail, the three large characters formed by countless runes suddenly collapsed. The runes reformed on the surface of the sail, forming a golden-winged cloud rock that was about to take flight. The cloud rock seemed to have completely come to life on the surface of the sail. It soared back and forth on the huge sail, and even clear cries came from the sail. However, at this time, the cultivators of the various sects were no longer in the mood to be envious of Jinling's 8th Tribulation Lightning Spirit treasure. After blocking the combined attack of 20 Blood Mara, the center of the formation was finally broken by the combined attack of 4 Jade Shura. Hundreds of Mara swarmed in and began a fierce melee with the cultivators of the various sects inside the formation. The spirit stone mine of Frost Island was on the verge of destruction. Once these Mara invaded the mine, not only would the mine be quickly destroyed by these Mara, but with the resources of the spirit stone mine, the Mara would be able to quickly grow stronger. It would probably be extremely difficult to take back the mine even with the strength of the entire North Sea. The two Laozu, Tian Shui and Tian Fan, joined hands again to fight. They struggled in the air to tangle with 2 Jade Shura, while the middle Dharma stage Laozu, Dongji Laozu, Feng Shidao Laozu, and Hai Hun Laozu worked together to fight against the other 2 Jade Shura. In order to avoid being surrounded by the 20 or so blood demon Luos in the sky, the remaining early Dharma elders had no choice but to rely on the remnants of the formation to continue defending. Jinling's Tian Shu and Tian Shan's 2 Laozu had already made their move again. They entered the center of the formation to help the various sects defend against the other Blood Mara's damage to the formation. The heavily injured Tian Chung Laozu was now at the center of the formation to help Jinling strengthen the defense of the formation's protective shield. This was to prevent a large group of Mara from suddenly coming back to attack Jinling's medium-sized spirit stone mine. The more than 10 top-grade spirit stones around Jinling Xianchun had already been replaced. Some of the more important positions had even been replaced 3 or 4 times. More than 10 top-grade spirit stones had already been used up in this battle, and the number was still increasing. Other than that, the hundreds of slots for the high-grade spirit stones had been used up even more. The reason why Jinling was able to reduce the casualties to this extent this time was partly because of the Laozu, partly because of the cloud sails, and partly because of the unity of the disciples. But most importantly, it had to be said that Jinling Xianchun had been managing the mother-child traction formation. After Lu Ping had completely refined the cloud sails, the golden rock once again shrunk into a small bird the size of a palm. The bird landed on Lu Ping's shoulder and turned its head to peck at the feathers on its body. It then spoke in the human language and said, "Master, you're taking advantage of me when I'm down. If I was still full of spirituality and my strength was not sealed, with your level of cultivation, the golden rock might not have been willing to recognize me as its master." Lu Ping smiled proudly and said, "You can't blame me for this. The situation was dangerous at that time. Only by slowly unsealing and refining myself could I protect my life from the attacks of those demonic cultivators and save my disciples, right?" The golden rock flapped its wings on Lu Ping's shoulder and said, "Just now, it seemed that an old friend of mine had awakened the golden rock from its seal. Do you know where it is now, master?" Lu Ping said, "You mean the vast sea bell? It is now in the hands of a mid-Dharma adept, Xiang Lu Laozu. It came to rescue us just now, but just now, it was chased away by a Jade Shura." Lu Ping's mind moved, and the golden rock flapped its wings and flew into the cloud sails. Lu Ping threw the cloud sails up, and a huge sail that was 10 feet tall and 30 feet wide rose up from the formation shield that Jinling was guarding. Jinling Xianchen, who was presiding over the formation, immediately understood. The island's protective formation immediately merged with the cloud sails, and the entire formation was immediately protected by the mother-child traction formation and the cloud sails. The cloud sails, in addition to its extraordinary ability to resist the demonic cultivator's soul-devouring magic, were itself a defensive spirit treasure, and it was a large-scale defensive spirit treasure. After being completely subdued and refined by Lu Ping, it could easily merge with the island's protective formation as one. Lu Ping only relaxed after leaving the cloud sails in the area that Zhenling was guarding. He immediately flew out of the formation and attacked a Mara that was attacking the central formation. At this time, although the cloud sails were far away from Lu Ping, the artifact spirit of the cloud sails, the golden rock, had been completely refined by Lu Ping. Right now, even the East Pole Laozu of the Blue Sea sect could not snatch the cloud sails from Lu Ping's hands, so Lu Ping was naturally very relieved. At this moment, Taoist Xian San had also organized a medium-sized 3 talents 5 elements grand formation, consisting of 32 Zhenling sect core forging cultivators. They charged out from the area where Zhenling's sect was stationed and began harassing Mo Luo's rear, who was besieging the central grand formation, in order to reduce the pressure on the cultivators who were besieged by the central grand formation as much as possible. As for the blood condensation cultivators, there were nearly 1,000 blood condensation disciples that Zhenling had sent to Frost Island. After this battle, the number of casualties had already exceeded 500. Zhenling Xianxin could not bear to send these disciples to the battlefield no matter what. Moreover, with the current situation, the blood condensation disciples would only be cannon fodder if they went out. More and more Mara rushed into the central formation. The entire central formation was already full of holes. Amidst all kinds of screams and screams, many Mara had even broken through the blockade of the cultivators of the various sects and burrowed into the spirit stone mines. Clang! Seeing that the central formation was about to be completely destroyed, the vast ocean bell rang again outside of Frost Island. Mara's originally frenzied attacks immediately stopped. The cultivators of the various sects took the opportunity to counterattack and continuously drove Mara away. As if he sensed something, Lu Ping raised his head and looked behind him. Joy immediately appeared on his face. At the place where the sky and water met, a dozen or so flying lights were flying towards Frost Island. The 2 flying lights at the front had already arrived in the sky just a few miles away from Frost Island in a few flashes. Who else could it be other than the 2 great cultivators, Daoshang and Tianxiang? Chapter 928. After Lu Ping exited the Zhenling formation, he headed straight for the Water Shura whose primordial spiritual treasure had been broken by Tiancheng Laozu at the cost of being seriously injured. Although this Blood Shura's primordial spiritual treasure had been broken by Tiancheng Laozu, and he had lost almost half of his strength, even so, this Blood Shura's strength was still at the early Dharma stage. His strength might not be weaker than someone like Tianshu Laozu. For a Blood Shura with such strength, it was easy for Lu Ping to seriously injure it under a sneak attack, but it was extremely difficult to kill it in one blow. If this Blood Shura tried his best to escape, Lu Ping would probably have to use all his means. Moreover, there were quite a number of Blood Shura madly attacking the central formation. If the surrounding Blood Shura rushed over to help, if Lu Ping was too late, he would probably be surrounded by dumplings. At this time, the Dharma Laozu of the various sects in the North Sea had finally come to help. The dozens of flowing lights in the sky were obviously more than 10 Dharma adepts, and the 2 great adepts, Daoshang and Tianxiang, took the lead and arrived near Frost Island in the blink of an eye. Originally, there was still a thick black mist in the sky that had blotted out the sky from the Great Devil Cultivation Formation, but with the arrival of the 2 great cultivators, the entire world seemed to have changed, and the mist from before had completely disappeared at some point. After the arrival of the 2 great adepts, to everyone's surprise, the 2 Laozu did not immediately make a move to turn the situation around. Instead, they stopped a few miles away from Frost Island and did not move forward. At this time, the situation on Frost Island was already very dangerous. More and more Mara had broken through the blockade of the various sects and entered the Spirit Stone Mine. Fortunately, the various sects' cultivators' attention was focused on the Great Shura, so most of the Shura that broke into the Spirit Stone Mine were minor repairs Shura that were equivalent to the blood condensation stage. There were only a few Great Shura that were at the core forging stage. However, these 2 Laozu were not completely idle. Tianxiang Laozu saw that the 2 Laozu, Tianfan and Tianshui, were struggling to resist the attacks of the 2 Jade Shura. If it was not for the wind and snow dual fan, they would probably have been defeated long ago. Tian Xiang Laozu casually flicked his finger at the surface of the sea, and a stream of water flowed from the surface of the sea into midair. Then, this stream of water continuously split into hundreds of small tributaries, forming a giant net in midair, and covered one of the Jade Shura that was fighting against the two Laozu, Tian Shui and Tian Fan. At the same time, Dao Sheng Laozu also made a move. Dao Sheng Laozu only lightly pointed his finger, and the Jade Shura that was suppressing Feng Shidao and Hai Hun Laozu suddenly let out a strange cry. Its body moved in a very strange posture, and its shoulder was cut by Dao Sheng Laozu's sword qi. Lu Ping could see it clearly from afar, and he guessed that this was Zhenling's main skill, the mystical ape water manipulation art. Lu Ping secretly compared it to his own water manipulation art, and he realized that the two were similar in terms of subtlety. However, Lu Ping's cultivation was too low, and he had only cultivated for a short period of time. His understanding of this kind of god power was far inferior to that of Tian Xiang Laozu, who had cultivated for nearly 1,000 years. Naturally, he could not use the god power of turning water into a net. Tian Xiang Laozu's water net god power was amazing, and it only took a moment for the Jade Shura to be unable to deal with it. Tian Fan and Tian Shui, the two Laozu, were suddenly under a lot of pressure. However, the Jade Shura's cultivation was still there. Although Tian Xiang Laozu's god power was fierce, it did not trap the Jade Shura for long. Soon, it broke free from the water net. Tian Xiang Laozu and Dao Sheng Laozu, after each of them made a move, hovered in the air above Frost Island and did not move. In just a moment, the escaping lights that were following Tian Xiang and Dao Sheng Laozu had caught up. In the leading yellow escaping light, Tian Kong Laozu shouted. The mountain-splitting axe in his hand carried an unparalleled power, and it slashed towards the Jade Shura that had just broken free from the water net. At the same time, Tian Feng Laozu swept up a whirlwind and swept past Tian Kong Laozu, heading towards a blood Shura that was fighting with Tian Shu Laozu. Immediately after that, more than 10 Dharma adepts from each sect arrived, and the situation on Huangli Island was suddenly reversed. The Mara clan, which originally had an overwhelming advantage, was now being attacked by the human adepts. If it were not for the large spirit stone mine, the Mara clan would have been defeated long ago. Lu Ping took advantage of this opportunity to suddenly attack the water Shura. For flying swords spread out from different directions, intertwining to form a huge sword formation in midair, trapping the unguarded water Shura in the sword formation. Although the blood Shura still had the power of a Dharma adept without its companion's spiritual treasure, it was unable to break through the great sword formation that Lu Ping had carefully set up. However, it would be extremely difficult for Lu Ping to use the sword formation to kill it. Lu Ping's mind moved, and the water vapor in the sky condensed. In an instant, the wind and clouds gathered, forming a dark cloud in midair, and flashes of lightning brewed and flashed. Lu Ping made a few hand signs and muttered to himself. Finally, he shouted, "Fall." Countless bolts of bluish-purple lightning changed shapes in midair, but in the end, they all fell into the sword formation. In the core space, near the two most core remarkable power talismans, a remarkable power talisman that flashed with lightning was like a glutton, swallowing the thick Danxia purple gas around it. In the sky above Frost Island's great formation, rays of Kuei water remarkable power continuously struck the sword formation. Only the blood-curdling screams of the blood Shura could be heard. Lu Ping was still unmoved. The inner yuan in his body was being consumed rapidly, supporting the continuous casting of the Kuei water divine thunder. There were also Mara who tried to attack Lu Ping in the surroundings to help the blood Shura that was trapped by Lu Ping's sword formation. However, the Dharma adepts that had reached the Dharma stage had been intentionally blocked by Laozu. The other Grand Shura-level Mara, under the protection of the small black flag above Lu Ping's head, could not even break through Lu Ping's protective light screen. The dark clouds in the sky continuously struck down 18 bolts of Kuei water divine thunder. Finally, the blood Shura in the sword formation was completely exhausted, no longer able to resist the strangulation of Lu Ping's sword formation. In just a moment, A puff of extremely pure water origin spiritual chi exploded from the sword formation and then quickly dissipated between heaven and earth. At this moment, the world was suddenly filled with an extremely oppressive aura. Even Lu Ping, who had a bloodline that could almost ignore the pressure of a Grand Shura, could feel an extremely strong throbbing. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw the two Grand Shura outside Frost Island, who were originally indifferent, looking at something with solemn expressions. Then, the entire Frost Island began to shake violently. It wasn't just Frost Island. Even the sea around Frost Island began to shake violently. Countless waves surged up and directly smashed down many of the icebergs on the shores of Frost Island. The sounds of ice cliffs collapsing into the sea continuously came from all around Frost Island. Lu Ping seemed to sense something. His eyes flashed with green light as he looked into the distance. He saw many white lines forming where the water and sky met, and then rapidly advancing towards Frost Island. Lu Ping was greatly shocked. He looked around and saw a white line rising from the surface of the sea in every direction. These white lines were connected to each other and formed a giant circle. With Frost Island as the center, the circle was shrinking at an extremely fast rate. This reminded Lu Ping of the Silver Sword Island in the Eastern Sea. The scene of the Kuan Fish Clan's Grand Shura attacking the island was a close shave. The situation in front of him was obviously much greater than that Kuan Fish Clan's Grand Shura cultivator back then. As the white lines approached, the huge waves grew taller and taller, even far surpassing the tallest iceberg on Frost Island. As long as the surging waves converged on Frost Island, the entire Frost Island would be completely submerged by the sea. At this moment, Daosheng and Tianxiang, the two Grand Shura Laozu, finally moved. One was in the south while the other was in the north. A 3-feet-long cudgel appeared in the hand of the celestial phenomenon patriarch. He threw the cudgel towards the huge waves coming from the north. The huge waves immediately calmed down and fell back down to the surface of the sea in a strange manner. Daosheng Laozu, on the other hand, went straight towards the huge waves coming from the south. Gusts of wind pressure crushed forward with Daosheng Laozu as the center. The huge waves that had already piled up to 50 to 60 meters were blown backwards by Daosheng Laozu's wind pressure. A huge gap also appeared in the south. Even so, the huge waves from the east and west were still pressing towards Frost Island. Although the two Grand Shura cultivators Tianxiang and Daosheng had neutralized the huge waves from the north and south, the power contained in the huge waves was still so strong that the two Grand Shura cultivators had to suppress it with all their might. However, they had no time to care about the huge waves coming from the east and west. Just as the entire Frost Island was about to be submerged in the giant wave, a low roar suddenly came from the eastern sea region. A giant tail that was dozens of meters long suddenly stretched out from the giant wave. The giant tail abruptly swung and smashed onto the giant wave. Half of the giant wave collapsed in an instant. Then, the giant tail swept horizontally again, and the entire eastern sea region was completely calmed down. At the same time, a primordial giant crocodile appeared in the western sea and suppressed the huge waves coming from the west. Why would the demon race appear here? Moreover, those who could neutralize the huge waves with Tianxiang and Daosheng must also be two Grand Shura cultivators. Only the primordial giant crocodile clan had two Grand Shura cultivators in the entire North Sea. This was also why the primordial giant crocodile clan had the absolute right to speak among the North Sea demon race. Before Lu Ping could react to the huge change in front of him, he saw the two Laozu cultivators, Tianxiang and Daosheng, converging towards the center of Frost Island from the north and south, and two burly but fierce-looking elders from the east and west. They're going to, very soon. Lu Ping knew the reason. At this time, in the sky above Frost Island, an ordinary-looking Shura that looked like a human was standing there. Unlike the Jade Shura, whose skin color had changed due to the influence of the origin Qi, this Shura looked no different from an ordinary person except for its eyes. Azura. Above the Jade Shura, the cultivation level was equivalent to that of a Grand Shura. However, because it had a companion spirit treasure that was comparable to a pure Yang spirit treasure, it far surpassed a late Dharma realm Grand Shura. Its strength was even close to that of the pure Yang Laozu's Azura. Chapter 929. No wonder the two great cultivators, Dao Shang and Tian Xiang, hadn't acted in time to eliminate Mara after the reinforcements from the North Sea had arrived. There was an Azura spying on them. It seemed that the two Laozu, Dao Shang and Tian Xiang, had discovered Mara's weakness. Mara had his own plans. He had originally planned to have two Jade Shuras lead the Mara clan to attack Frost Island, while the Mara would lead the remaining two Jade Shuras and a group of Mara to intercept the cultivators heading north to reinforce Frost Island. The forces gathered by Mara should have been enough to carry out their plan, but two unexpected things happened. One was that Xiang Lu Laozu, who wielded the Bell of the Ocean, acted alone and avoided Mara's interception, appearing near Frost Island. The second was that the North Sea humans and demons, who were originally enemies, had secretly joined forces. Because of Xiang Lu Laozu's appearance and harassment, the sects of the North Sea managed to hold on under the great formation that the demonic cultivators had secretly set up. At the same time, they managed to restrain the existence of a Jade Shura. With the cooperation of the humans and demons, the human cultivators easily broke through the obstruction of Mara's group, led by the Azura, and arrived at Frost Island's sea in time. At this time, Lu Ping was hiding in a quiet place within Jinling's island's great formation. He didn't join the cultivators of the other sects in chasing after the defeated Mara. Lu Ping held an upper-rank spirit stone in his hand. As he recovered his inner energy, he used his mind to observe the changes in his heart core space. The higher the rank of a Mara, the purer its origin essence was. After a blood Azura died and its corpse returned to its origin, the origin essence it emitted was naturally enough to make Lu Ping drool. Although this origin essence was extremely difficult to collect, Lu Ping had Linglong, a spirit treasure made from Taoist ape's natal spirit treasure, the spirit calming iron. The moment the blood Azura was killed by Lu Ping, she managed to collect a certain amount of origin essence in time. This was also why Lu Ping had chosen to ambush the Water Shura. Apart from the fact that its natal spirit treasure was shattered by Tianqing Laozu to avenge Laozu, another important reason was that this blood Azura's origin essence was suitable for Lu Ping to absorb. Although Lu Ping had Linglong to help collect the origin essence, it was extremely difficult to store. If Lu Ping didn't absorb and refine it in time, Linglong wouldn't be able to keep it for too long. Although Lu Ping seemed to be recovering his inner true essence, most of his energy was spent on refining this water attribute origin essence. Inside the core space, every time a wisp of essence escaped from Linglong's wine cauldron, it would immediately be swallowed by the purple mist and then absorbed by the golden core at the center of the core space. To be more precise, it was absorbed by the strange serpent inside the golden core. And every time Lu Ping absorbed a wisp of dispersed essence, he could clearly feel a significant increase in his cultivation base. It could save him at least a month's worth of cultivation. When Lu Ping finished absorbing Linglong's origin essence, Lu Ping felt as if he had been in seclusion for 2 or 3 years. It was still a chaotic battle outside of Frost Island. Although the human race had the absolute advantage right now, the destruction of the Great Formation at the center had caused the human race and Devil Luo to mix together a long time ago. There was me and you and me. Even if they wanted to cast large area of effect offensive divine abilities, they were still restricted. They could only fight in close combat. At this time, Lu Ping obviously couldn't cultivate in seclusion for a long time. After he finished refining the origin essence, Lu Ping threw himself into the pursuit of Mara. However, when Lu Ping got up, Linglong's wine cauldron spat out a translucent bead. It was a miniature spirit gathering bead. Previously, Linglong had said that it could condense a miniature spirit vein from a recently fallen blood Shura. He didn't expect it to actually succeed. However, when Linglong said this, she thought that Lu Ping would only be able to condense a spirit gathering bead through the wine cauldron after his cultivation reached the Dharma stage. She didn't expect that Lu Ping would be able to fully utilize the power of a spirit treasure and condense a miniature spirit gathering bead when he was only at the peak of the core forging stage. Dao Shang, Tian Xiang, the two demon race cultivators, and the Azura were long gone from the sky above Frost Island. Only 4 Jade Shuras were still fighting the mid-Dharma adepts of the North Sea sections. The remaining 20 or so blood Mara had already fled in all directions. The sects of the North Sea seemed to have made up their minds to win this battle. Many Dharma adepts had already begun to work together to hunt down the traces of Mara. At the same time, among the turbulent waves, demon cultivators in human form occasionally rushed out of the sea and joined forces with the human cultivators to kill the defeated Mara. Tian Kong Laozu had already given up on the Jade Shura that he was fighting with earlier. Even though he could fight a Jade Shura to a standstill with the mountain-splitting axe, it was almost impossible for him to win. Tian Kong Laozu gave up on the Jade Shura and turned to join forces with Tian Fan and Tian Shui to kill the other Jade Shura. Now that the human cultivators had firmly gained the upper hand, the defeat of Mara was already a foregone conclusion. Without Tian Kong Laozu's entanglement, the Jade Shura was eager to have a chance to escape. However, in reality, even without Tian Kong Laozu's obstruction, there were still cultivators from the other sects who came forward to stop the Jade Shura. This was an extremely rare opportunity to capture all the North Sea Mara in one fell swoop. Naturally, no sect would be willing to play any tricks. Even the demon race cultivators who rushed to help were the same. Right now, the Jade Shura that Tian Kong Laozu had abandoned had already been surrounded and killed by the 2 mid-Dharma adepts of the human race and 2 demon race cultivators, Laozu. After Lu Ping flew out of Frost Island, he reached out and waved his hand. The cloud sail that was floating above the area where Jinling was stationed shrank back to the size of a palm and was put into his core space. At this time, the human race cultivators had already joined forces to chase Mara out of Frost Island. Right now, the entire sea outside Frost Island was a battlefield. The human and demon race cultivators were working together to kill the defeated Mara in the sea and in the sky. There was no need for the cloud sail to help Jinling's island protection formation. Lu Ping's divine consciousness swept out, then he turned and headed southeast. The Mara that he met along the way avoided him, and Lu Ping's pair of flying swords did not stay idle either. They followed Lu Ping as he flew, killing everything in his way. By the time Lu Ping stopped, at least 4 or 5 great Shuras of the core forging stage had been killed by him. There were even more Shuras that were undergoing minor repairs. At this time, the 3 Laozu of Tianshan, Tianfeng, and Tianshu were working together to kill a wind Shura in the Dharma stage. Although this Shura had been suppressed by the 3 Laozu, it was impossible to kill it in a short period of time. The wind Shura had a companion spiritual treasure in his hand that seemed to be in between a tangible and intangible state. It swam around his body, causing the 3 Laozu of Tianshan, Tianfeng, and Tianshu to be extremely wary and unable to attack freely. From Lu Ping's point of view, rather than saying that the 3 of them were besieging the blood Shura, it was more accurate to say that the 3 of them were working together to prevent the Shura from escaping. If this continued, the wind Shura would definitely be able to find an opening in their defense and escape. Lu Ping saw that among the 3 Laozu, Laozu of Tianfeng was the most proactive. Looking at the faintly discernible silk-like companion spiritual treasure around the wind Shura, he wondered if Uncle Tianfeng had taken a fancy to this companion spiritual treasure. Lu Ping swung the 5 elements cloud-light robe behind him to conceal his figure and fled to the periphery of the 3 Laozu. At this time, the wind Shura swept away the 2 Laozu of Tianfeng and Tianshu. The 2 of them were wary of the power of this companion spiritual treasure and did not dare to face it head-on. They could only retreat. However, they did not expect the wind Shura to transform into a gust of wind and rush at full force towards Tianshan Laozu, who had the strongest defense among the 3. Tianfeng Laozu looked anxious and said, "Oh no, the wind Shura is going to leave." As he spoke, the wind Shura had already broken through Tianshan Laozu's obstruction. Just as he was about to transform into a gust of wind and escape, a piercingly cold sword chi unexpectedly shot out from Tianshan Laozu's side. The sword chi split into 4 in midair, but its power was not reduced at all. As the 4 sword chi slashed down from the sky, even the space that the sword chi passed through began to wrinkle, as if it was about to be cut by the sword chi at any time, let alone the oncoming wind. Under such circumstances, the wind Azura was naturally blocked, so he could only revert to his original form. The faintly discernible belt of wind turned into a green substance, blocking, circling, and shaking at the 4 streaks of sword chi in the air. The 4 streaks of sword chi were actually sent flying backwards in different directions. A small flag with a mast suddenly appeared in the void. With a gentle wave of the flag, countless clouds surged up from the surface of the flag. The 4 strands of sword chi slashed into the clouds like clay oxen entering the sea. In just a moment, the wind Shura had already lost the opportunity to break free from the 3 Tianfeng Laozu's entanglement. It was once again surrounded by Tianfeng Laozu's group. What was different was that this time, there were not 3 people attacking the wind Shura, but 4. Above Lu Ping's head was the cloud sail. Around him were 4 flying swords, the beautiful lady in autumn waters, and the flowing stream. He was right in front of the wind Azura. The reason why Tianshan, Tianfeng, and Laozu could not do anything to the wind Shura earlier was that none of them could withstand the power of the wind Shura's companion's spiritual treasure head-on. Now that Lu Ping had the cloud sail, an authentic defensive spiritual treasure, the 4 of them had the ability to face the wind Shura head-on. The wind Shura, who had suppressed the power of the companion's spiritual treasure, was at best an ordinary early Dharma adept. It was no match for the 3 Tianshan, Tianfeng, and Tianshu Laozu's combined forces. Furthermore, the 2 pairs of flying swords in Lu Ping's hands were not something an ordinary early Dharma adept could underestimate. Under the suppression of absolute power, the wind Shura very quickly had one of its legs broken by Tianshan Laozu's mountain-driving whip. Immediately after, the wind Shura's belt of wind that was trying to entangle Tianshu Laozu was once again blocked by the cloud sail. Tianfeng Laozu took the opportunity to slash the wind wheel at its back. Even though the wind Shura tried its best to dodge, half of its shoulder was still sliced off. The wind Shura, who had been severely injured, saw that there was no hope of escaping. It wrapped the belt of wind around its body and charged towards Tianfeng Laozu. However, the wind Shura only felt a flash of light before its eyes. It looked at the familiar body in front of it with a confused expression. Why did this headless body look so familiar? Chapter 9:30. Looking at the broken wind belt, Tianfeng Laozu sighed and said, "This is not unexpected. At least these fragments can be used to strengthen my wind wheels. In this way, it will be enough for me to condense the 9th spirit fostering restriction in the future." In previous tribulations of Mara, the number of Shui Mara and above who had died was not small. However, there were very few people who could obtain their accompanying spiritual treasures from Mara. Most of the time when Mara died, their accompanying spiritual treasures would be broken or even self-destructed. If they were lucky, they might leave behind some of the essence of their accompanying spiritual treasures, which were excellent spiritual materials used to improve the quality of magic weapons. Even so, whenever the cultivators of the human clan or the monster clan had the opportunity to kill blood demon Luo, they would expect to be lucky enough to get the companion's spiritual treasure in his hand after killing him. Therefore, after the companion's spiritual treasure obtained in this way was modified and passed the Thunder Tribulation, it would become a Thunder Tribulation spiritual treasure that could be put into use immediately. This was much faster than constantly upgrading an ordinary magic treasure to a Thunder Tribulation spiritual treasure. Although it was extremely difficult for the modified companion's spiritual treasure to pass the Thunder Tribulation, and it was extremely difficult to exert the full power of the spiritual treasure after passing it, this did not prevent the cultivators from looking forward to this method of obtaining spiritual treasures quickly. Tianfeng Laozu teamed up with Tianshan and Tianshu Laozu in order to get the wind belt in the Shui Shura's hand. However, they returned in disappointment. Tianshan Laozu smiled and said, "It's normal that we didn't get the accompanying spiritual treasures. If we did, it would mean that we are very lucky." Tianfeng Laozu's expression changed. He put away the broken pieces of the Shura's wind belt and used the spirit sealing talisman to suppress them in the spirit sealing box. This was to prevent the original wind attribute essence from completely dissipating. He looked at Lu Ping and said, "I originally wanted to borrow this mini treasures boy's fate to obtain a companion spiritual treasure, but I didn't expect it to still fail." Back then, Lu Ping had gifted Tianlin Laozu the primordial spiritual treasure he had obtained in the Yingyu swamp. After Tianjiang Laozu had modified it, Tian Lin Laozu had helped the primordial spiritual treasure overcome the thunder tribulation and become a first tribulation spiritual treasure. This had made many Zhenling Laozu envious. Lu Ping naturally knew that Tian Feng Laozu was joking. He smiled and did not reply. Instead, he focused most of his divine sense on the Linglong wine cauldron in his heart-core space. "How is it?" asked Lu Ping. He knew that Linglong had completed the cauldron. A miniature spirit-gathering pearl flew out of the cauldron. Linglong's head emerged from the cauldron and said, "The essence dissipated too quickly, so I didn't capture it. Besides, you can't use the wind attribute essence, and the formation of this spirit-gathering pearl is too difficult. Fortunately, you have killed many Mara along the way, and Linglong has absorbed a lot along the way. So this blood Shura has condensed a spirit-gathering pearl." The conversation between the two was through divine sense, so the three Laozu did not know. Although Linglong said that she could condense a miniature spirit-gathering pearl or a miniature spirit vein by absorbing the essence of a fallen blood Shura, that was under ideal circumstances. Usually, when a blood Mara died, Linglong could only gather half of the essence at most, and this was under the condition that Lu Ping was prepared. At this time, Tian Shu Laozu suddenly said, "I have just received news that Hai Hun Laozu of the Haiyan sect and 2 early Dharma adepts from the sect have joined forces to kill a blood Shura and obtained a companion spiritual treasure." Tian Feng Laozu cursed and said, "Damn it, they are so lucky." Tian Shan Laozu said, "Even if they obtain a companion spiritual treasure, it is not easy to modify it and help it pass the thunder trial. As far as I know, the Haiyan sect does not have a master crafting weapon. Moreover, not everyone in the North Sea is willing to risk their own thunder trial to help a spiritual treasure pass the thunder trial." Tian Shu Laozu nodded and said, "Exactly. But what should we do next? Should we continue to join forces to kill the blood Shura?" Tian Shan Laozu shook his head and said, "By now, the blood Mara who can escape has long escaped. Those who have not escaped are already in a desperate situation. They do not need our help, lest the adepts from other sects misunderstand our motives." Seeing that everyone nodded in agreement, Tian Shan Laozu continued to instruct, "The most important thing now is to command the disciples to destroy the ordinary Blood Mara army that has lost the guidance of the Blood Mara. At the same time, protect the disciples. Senior brother Tian Shu, you also need to command the disciples to destroy the Mara who have infiltrated the large spirit stone mine in the center. Although most of these Mara are underground miner repairs Azuras, there are very few great Azuras at the core forging stage. They can be given to the disciples as a training mission, but I still need you to be there to protect the disciples and prevent the other sects from taking advantage of the mine." Tian Shu Laozu nodded and said, "That's right." After Tian Shan Laozu finished instructing, Lu Ping was about to leave when he heard Tian Shan Laozu say, "Don't go. The battle has just ended. This time, our sect has suffered heavy casualties, especially your senior uncle Tian Cheng. His injuries are even more serious. You are the only alchemist grandmaster on Frost Island now, so it is time for you to leave." Lu Ping wasn't in the mood to stay on Frost Island at all, but Tian Shan Laozu's reason couldn't be refuted by Lu Ping. He could only say, "This disciple has already checked on senior uncle Tian Cheng's injuries. Let's wait for senior grandmaster Fornax to arrive first. As for the injuries of the other disciples, I believe that the disciples of the pill pavilion will arrive soon. This time, we have prepared enough healing pills, we just need to use the right medicine." Tian Shan Laozu didn't hear Lu Ping's intention to evade. He thought that Lu Ping wanted to escape because of Tian Cheng Laozu's injuries, so he said, "I also know that junior brother Tian Cheng's damaged origin is extremely difficult to recover. However, there is a grandmaster on Frost Island who is healing the disciples. This will be a great help in calming the hearts of the disciples." Lu Ping had no choice but to say, "I won't hide it from you, senior uncle. On my way here, I discovered an extremely important clue. Right now, I really don't have the mood to stay on Frost Island. I have to go investigate. Please allow me to report to you when the time comes." Before Tian Shan Laozu could ask more, Lu Ping had already disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Tian Shan Laozu sighed helplessly and turned to return to Frost Island. It wasn't that Lu Ping didn't want to invite Tian Shan Laozu along. But if the place Lu Ping was going to was really dangerous, not only would Tian Shan Laozu not be able to help, he might even be a burden to him. Of course, if it was Tian Fan, Tian Kong, or other mid-Dharma Laozu, it would be a different story. However, right now, they were besieging the Jade Shura and were at a critical moment, so they naturally didn't have the time to care about other things. Moreover, Lu Ping himself wanted to get the benefits first, so he didn't want to bring others to share his own benefits. Just as Lu Ping left Frost Island and headed southeast, the spirit of the Golden House, Ruyu, suddenly communicated with Lu Ping through telepathy. She said, "Master, it's in this direction." Ruyu can already sense that the treasured ship has sunk in the deep sea a few hundred miles away. Lu Ping was overjoyed and said, "Really?" Ruyu hesitated for a moment and said, "It is indeed in the direction of the treasured ship." However, Ruyu can only sense the approximate location of the treasured ship. "I don't know its exact location." Lu Ping didn't mind. However, at this time, Lu Ping saw the three Laozu of Sky Mountain, Tian Feng, and Tian Shu besieging the Blood Azura. He had no choice but to go and lend a hand. After Lu Ping bid farewell to Laozu of Sky Mountain, he flew southeast until he was 300 miles away. At this time, Lu Ping had no choice but to cover his body with the Cloud Light 5 Elements raiment. Along the way, Lu Ping discovered that a portion of the Azuras who were fleeing in all directions from Frost Island had started to gather in the direction Lu Ping was going. At the beginning, Lu Ping was still on a whim. He used his dual flying swords to kill the Azuras he encountered. However, as Lu Ping went further and further, the number of Azuras he encountered became more and more frequent. Their cultivations also grew higher and higher. In the end, they simply gathered into a torrent, flying in the sky or swimming in the water. Lu Ping knew that something was wrong. However, Ruyu's perception of the treasured ship was in the direction of the defeated Azuras. At this time, Lu Ping didn't dare to show himself and kill the Azuras. He simply concealed his tracks and began to follow this group of Azuras towards the southeast. When this group of Mara was 500 miles away, the group had already gathered nearly 700 to 800. Among them, there were dozens of big Mara who were in the core forging realm. Lu Ping hid himself even more. At this time, this group of Mara collectively sank towards the bottom of the sea. Lu Ping's heart moved. He silently escaped into the sea and continued to follow this group of Mara towards the southeast. This group of Mara continued to flee towards the southeast for 200 to 300 miles. During this time, they also sank deeper and deeper into the sea. According to Lu Ping's estimation, they were at least 3,000 to 4,000 meters below the surface of the sea. However, according to Ru Yu's perception, Lu Ping actually knew the direction that Fei Ling Sek's treasured ship was heading towards. Now, he was still heading in the same direction as this group of Mara. At this time, it would be unreasonable for Lu Ping to not suspect that this group of Mara had the same destination as him. Lu Ping's consciousness sank into the House of Gold and asked, "Ruyu, I remember that you once said that there was a large spirit vein in the treasured ship?" Ruyu thought for a moment and said, "That's right. However, because I was taken away from the House of Gold and the treasured ship sank, that large spirit vein had already been selected at the bottom of the sea if it hadn't dissipated yet. That's why it was preserved." As soon as Ru Yu's voice fell, she heard a clamor from the group of Mara ahead. They faintly revealed a hint of joy. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw a huge trench at the bottom of the sea in front of him. This group of Mara directly sank into the trench and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The bottom of the sea was already 4,000 to 5,000 meters deep. However, after Lu Ping used the 3 Pure One's true pupils, the situation at the bottom of the sea was still very clear. Lu Ping stood at the edge of the trench and looked down. A huge ship covered with seaweed mud was lying quietly at the bottom of the sea. The group of several hundred Mara were diving towards the ship. From afar, it looked like a group of ants crawling towards a huge tree. Chapter 931. The treasure ship was a common tool used to communicate between the overseas training world and the central training world. At the same time, it was also a necessary way to pass through the stormy ocean that separated the two realms. At the same time, it was also the only way to set up a long-distance teleporter. For the overseas large sects to be recognized by the entire training world, other than having at least 2 Dharma adepts and at least 10 third-generation Dharma adepts, the most important thing was for the sect to have the ability to communicate between the 2 realms. Only then would it be possible to be recognized by the central training world and even the entire training world. All these requirements would be focused on one thing, and that was the treasure ship. And the treasure ship was not only a reflection of the heritage of a sect, but more importantly, it was a symbol of the status of a large sect. According to what Lu Ping knew, a treasure ship had to be at least 140 feet long and 400 feet wide. These were just minor details. The key was that the shell of the treasure ship had to be at least an upper-grade ritual weapon made from top-grade spiritual materials. The use of the keel of the treasure ship had to be at least at the level of a magic weapon, or even higher. In addition, the other important parts of the treasure ship needed to be above the level of a top-grade ritual weapon. The upper-grade ritual weapon used on the shell was the most inferior part of the treasure ship. There was a space in the key parts of the treasure ship. Some rich sects might directly embed a treasure grotto heaven in it. If they could not, a space grotto heaven at the level of a ritual weapon could be supported. However, compared to a treasure grotto heaven, there was naturally a big difference. The treasure ship of the failing sect obviously did not embed a treasure grotto heaven in it. This was not to say that the failing sect did not have the ability to create a treasure grotto heaven, but the requirements to embed a treasure grotto heaven on the treasure ship were far greater than the requirements to embed a treasure grotto heaven at the level of a ritual weapon. And in this grotto heaven, the most important thing was to be able to accumulate a large spirit vein to create a false earth vein. When the treasure ship traveled in the sea, when it resisted the wind and waves, and when it passed through the dangerous environment of the stormy ocean, it needed a large spirit vein as a source of power. In addition, there were 3 other important factors. The first was to have a Dharma adept. This was a prerequisite for the treasure ship to be able to pass through the stormy ocean. It was also the key factor for a treasure ship to be used as a deterrent. It was also the reason why a large sect needed at least 2 Dharma adepts. At the very least, one of them could stay in the sect, and the other could guard the treasure ship. The second was a master of arrays. From the outside to the inside, there were countless runes engraved on the treasure ship. The entire treasure ship could be said to be an independent space of arrays. This was an important way to defend against enemies, and also an important indicator of the quality of the treasure ship. One of the most important reasons why the outer shell of the treasure ship had to be assembled with high-grade spirit materials was to be able to withstand the huge force generated by the activation and operation of the entire treasure ship formation. Secondly, it was to resist all kinds of dangers that might be encountered during the voyage. The third was the artifact spirit of the entire treasure ship. With the existence of an artifact spirit, cultivators could save a lot of true essence when driving the treasure ship on the sea. It could also adjust the resources of the spirit veins in time, and it could also help the array formation master coordinate the activation of the treasure ship's array formation. The third was the spirit of the treasure ship. With the existence of a spirit, it could save the cultivator a lot of Zhenyuan when driving the treasure ship on the sea. It could also adjust the resources of the spirit vein in time, and it could also help the master of arrays coordinate the activation and operation of the array of the treasure ship. The outer shell of the treasured ship was covered with mud from the seabed. Even though the majority of the outer shell had reached the level of a high-grade magic tool, and many parts had even reached the level of a top-grade magic tool, it could be seen that many places had already been severely corroded. Most of the runic patterns carved on the outer shell had already become blurred. The shell of the treasure ship was covered with mud from the bottom of the sea. Although most of the shell had reached the level of a top-grade instrument, and some of them had even reached the level of a top-grade instrument, many parts of the shell had already been severely corroded. Most of the array inscriptions on the shell had become blurred. The treasure ship was tilted to the right and leaned against the bottom of the cliff. On land, the divine sense of a cultivator who had just advanced to the core forging stage could cover a radius of 100 feet. On the other hand, the divine sense of an early Dharma adept could cover a radius of 10 miles. An ordinary adept who had just reached the blood condensation stage could probably use his divine sense to cover a radius of 100 feet on land. An adept who had just entered the core forging stage could use his divine sense to cover a radius of 100 feet. An early Dharma adept could use his divine sense to cover a radius of 10 miles. Lu Ping's divine sense was far more powerful than others and was comparable to a mid-Dharma adept. If he used his divine sense on land, he could detect any movement within a radius of 20 miles. However, at the bottom of the sea, Lu Ping's divine sense could only reach a maximum of 3,000 feet due to the pressure and isolation of the sea. This meant that he could barely scan the surface of the treasure ship. Lu Ping hid at the edge of the cliff for 2 hours and did not discover any other Mara returning. At the same time, he did not discover any fluctuations from Mara who was at or above the Dharma stage. In the end, he concluded that this was probably the nest of one of Mara's armies. No Mara at the Dharma stage appeared. Perhaps their leader had been killed in the battle on Frost Island, or perhaps they were being chased by the Dharma adepts of the human and demon races of the North Sea. They did not dare to return to their nest not too far away from Frost Island. In the end, Lu Ping decided to explore the treasure ship. If not for the fact that Lu Ping's level of cultivation had increased, the pressure at the bottom of the sea would have been enough for Lu Ping to use the water moon pearl. However, in order to not expose himself, Lu Ping could only use his inner yuan and physical body to resist the water pressure. Fortunately, Lu Ping had an idea and used the cloud sail to cover his body. Otherwise, it would have been a torture for Lu Ping's inner yuan and physical body. However, Ruyu had previously told Lu Ping that before the treasure ship sank, Fei Ling's sex Laozu had already collected most of the treasures that could be taken from the treasure ship. The treasure ship had been submerged at the bottom of the sea for 4,000 years. Even if there were any treasures left, they would have been corroded and rusted by the sea water. What's more, because of the large spirit vein in the middle of the ship, this place had obviously become Emo Luo's lair. With Emo Luo's nature of devouring spirits, Lu Ping's initial sliver of hope vanished without a trace. However, Lu Ping still decided to go in and take a look. Just this large spirit vein alone was worth Lu Ping going in to investigate. Moreover, now that there was no blood Shura here, this made Lu Ping even more daring. Although the main body of the treasured ship was assembled from numerous high-grade and top-grade magic treasures, many of the key parts were magic treasures of the magic treasure level, especially the dragon bone. According to Ruyu, it was a large magic treasure that had condensed 3 treasure restrictions. Lu Ping checked many cabins in the treasure ship and found that it was really as Ruyu said. There was almost no harvest. He couldn't help but feel a little disheartened. However, he also found that the interior of the treasure ship was mostly maintained intact. At the same time, it hadn't suffered too much damage from Mara. This made Lu Ping very happy, and he secretly felt very lucky. Although Mara was soul-devouring, magic treasures usually condensed 4 treasure barriers, and reached the level of psychic magic treasures would only give birth to a weak spirituality. Similarly, it would also attract Mara's attention. And ordinary magic treasures were usually called spirit-breeding magic treasures. Their spirituality was not obvious at all, so they wouldn't attract Mara's attention. Therefore, the shell, keel, and most of the cabins of the treasure ship were preserved to the greatest extent. Lu Ping checked the remaining cabins while sinking his divine thoughts into the golden house to ask Ruyu, "Do you know who injured this treasure ship when it sank?" Ruyu shook her head and said, "I can't remember. But it seems that the formation plate of the treasure ship had a problem first, which greatly reduced the power of the formation outside the treasure ship. Then the left side of the treasure ship was pierced, and the golden house was broken. The person who sneaked up on me seemed to be targeting me, but Zhongjuan Laozu appeared in time and saved me. However, when I was taken away by Zhongjuan Laozu, the treasure ship didn't seem to sink completely." "Oh," Lu Ping said, "this is too much of a coincidence." Obviously, Fei Ling sent out a mole, and they cooperated with each other to sink the treasure ship. Ruyu nodded and said, "It should be so." After Zhongjuan Laozu brought us back to Fei Ling's sect, he handed it over to Zhongshuan Laozu and Jiao Yuqiang to repair it. But not long after, Jiao Yuqiang laid down a big formation in the spirit stone mine and secretly placed me there. It has been 4,000 years since then. If Master didn't appear in time, I'm afraid that Ruyu's spirituality would have been exhausted and disappeared. These days, Ryu had recovered more than half of her memories. Although she had forgotten a lot of her previous memories due to the erosion of her spirituality, she had also recovered a little. She also remembered a little about the situation when the treasure ship sank, but there were still many key points that she couldn't remember. Even if Ryu completely recovered her memory of 4,000 years ago, she probably couldn't know the cause and effect of the destruction of Fei Ling's sect with her identity as a spirit. But at least she could provide a lot of information for Lu Ping. At this time, when Lu Ping was about to come out of a cabin, Ryu suddenly transmitted her voice to him. Master, Ryu seems to remember that there used to be a secret room here. It seems that Mara hasn't found it yet. Master, open it and see if you can find anything. Lu Ping was delighted and immediately asked, I'm afraid there is more than one secret room in this treasure ship, right? Ryu nodded and said, That's right. It's just that most of the secret rooms are assembled from the components of extremely good quality psychic treasures and above. Just now, Ryu saw quite a few of them, but those secret rooms had already been completely destroyed by Mara. This secret room, however, is made from the components of ordinary magic treasures. Perhaps it's because of this that it didn't attract Mara's attention. However, it's precisely because the quality of this secret room isn't good that even if there are some things inside, they won't be very good. Lu Ping naturally had already thought of this. His divine sense penetrated the direction that Ryu pointed, but the surface of the cabin suddenly flashed with a layer of faint brilliance, and Lu Ping's divine sense was bounced off. Lu Ping was surprised and said, The treasure ship's array is actually still working. Ryu was obviously also surprised and said, Maybe it's because of the spirit vein. When the treasure ship sank that day, although the array was destroyed, most of the array on the treasure ship was still operating. Although Zhongju and Laozu abandoned the ship, he obviously wanted to salvage the treasure ship in the future and use it again, so he didn't completely shut down the array. It's because the array can protect the hull of the ship from being eroded by the seawater to the greatest extent. Lu Ping thought of the array runes on the shell of the treasure ship that were blurred but could still be seen. Presumably, it was because of this that the treasure ship could still maintain a complete outline at the bottom of the sea for 4,000 years. Although the array on the body of the cabin was still working, due to the relocation of the spirit vein, the protection was obviously extremely limited. Lu Ping pressed his palm up, and the surface of his palm flashed with a golden brilliance. The body of the cabin that his palm pressed quickly began to dissolve, and slowly, a cabin with a radius of 5 feet was revealed. After 4,000 years, this cabin still hadn't been invaded by the seawater. When Lu Ping broke this cabin, he had already arranged a layer of waterproof restriction on the outside, so he walked inside. A corpse was lying in the cabin, and the corpse had long decomposed, leaving only a skeleton and tattered clothes. There was a necklace hanging below the neck of the skeleton, and Lu Ping naturally saw that it was a storage magic tool, so he reached out and pulled it off. Lu Ping looked around the cabin, but unfortunately, he didn't find anything. There were only the marks of the bombardment left on the cabin wall. It was obvious that this person was trapped inside after the treasure ship activated the array. After the treasure ship sank, but because of the existence of the spirit vein and Zhongju and Laozu didn't close the array, this cultivator still couldn't escape from the secret room. In the end, he was forcibly suffocated in the secret room. As for how the cultivator managed to enter the secret chamber, Lu Ping didn't know. However, he could tell that the cultivator's cultivation base wasn't high when he was alive, at least not in the Avatar realm. Otherwise, even if he couldn't break through the secret chamber's wall, he could still cause a huge commotion and attract the attention of the Fei Ling sect cultivators who were retreating. Lu Ping roughly walked around the treasure ship, and after he didn't find anything, he returned to the broken cabin wall, and then he followed the hole to the other side of the ship. Only then did he find that the blow that broke the treasure ship not only broke the port side, but also the starboard side. It was precisely because the starboard side was also broken that after the treasure ship sank to the bottom of the sea, the spirit vein was reintroduced into the spirit vein through the hole on the starboard side. At this time, the hole on the starboard side, which was also the source of the spirit vein, had a huge hole dug by Mara. Chapter 932. There was a layer of prohibition placed at the entrance of the cave, isolating it from the seawater. Lu Ping snuck into the cave and found that this layer of prohibition was only a very simple application of the essence of the source. However, the person who had set it up was extremely powerful, which was why it could withstand the pressure of such deep seawater. In Lu Ping's opinion, the person who had set up this layer of prohibition was at least at the Dharma stage, Mara. It was not difficult for Lu Ping to remove this layer of prohibition, but once he touched it, he was afraid that it would immediately alert the hundreds of Mara who had escaped into the cave earlier. After thinking for a while, Lu Ping flicked his hands continuously, and the 12 gentian pearls were flicked one by Lu Ping in all directions of the cave entrance. After that, Lu Ping still felt uneasy, so he placed 4 flying swords around the 12 gentian pearls. Only then did he make a spell with both hands. Just as he was about to hit the layer of prohibition, Lu Ping suddenly pulled back his hands again. He slapped his head, shook a large silver seal from his waist, and threw it above the cave entrance on the port side. Lu Ping thought for a moment, and after making sure that he had set up everything carefully, he stomped his feet and summoned the rank 9 white jade lotus. As the white jade lotus emitted a hazy white brilliance, lines of formation runes flashed on the petals, and then the surface of the 12 gentian pearls shone with a 5-colored brilliance. Lu Ping raised his hands, and the brilliance on the surface of the gentian pearls immediately converged, and together with the white jade lotus, they were hidden in the surrounding seawater. Only then did Lu Ping make a seal with both hands, and fiercely pushed at the prohibition of the cave entrance. Together with the prohibition of the cave entrance, the surrounding seabed suddenly shook, and the prohibition was immediately broken. The turbulent seawater poured into the cave entrance, and countless screams of fear came from the depths of the cave. Lu Ping was still silently guarding the cave entrance. After seeing that the cave entrance was filled with seawater, he shook the cloud-light 5 elements garment that had turned into a cloak behind him, and his entire person suddenly disappeared in the seawater. The water was surging, and more than a dozen Mara rushed out of the cave under the leadership of 2 great Asuras. However, looking at the quiet seabed around them, these Asuras seemed a little suspicious. Under the command of the 2 great Asuras, they began to split up and investigate the surrounding cabins. As soon as the 3 minor repairs Asuras on the left walked to the side of a cabin of the treasure ship, they felt that there was something wrong with the surrounding water. Before the 3 Asuras discovered any clues, their entire bodies began to explode in the seawater. 3 spiritual auras of different attributes spread in the seawater, and the bodies of the 3 minor repairs Asuras melted in the seawater with the dissipation of the spiritual aura. The movement here soon attracted the attention of more than a dozen Asuras. Although the 3 minor repairs Asuras died silently, Mara was extremely sensitive to spiritual aura fluctuations. When Asuras died, they would often return to rich spiritual aura of heaven and earth, and it was extremely easy for other Asuras to know. However, before these Asuras could gather and investigate the place where the 3 minor repairs Asuras had died, these scattered Asuras exploded in different places. The spiritual aura fluctuations caused by the deaths of the minor repairs Asuras came from all directions. The 2 great Asuras finally sensed that something was wrong. They turned around and were about to return to the cave entrance, but they suddenly realized that the seawater around them was surging. Water currents from different directions entangled the 2 great Asuras from all directions. No matter how hard they struggled, they could not break free. At this moment, the 2 great Asuras finally realized that something was wrong. Shrill roars came from their mouths, and they spread into the cave entrance. They seemed to be warning the other Asuras in the cave, and they seemed to be asking for help. The roars of the great Asuras stopped abruptly, and the surrounding seawater immediately returned to calmness. The bodies of the 2 great Asuras had completely disappeared, leaving only rich spiritual aura in the seawater spreading in all directions. The complete death of the pair of Asuras finally alarmed the hundreds of great minor repairs Asuras hiding in the cave again. The seawater at the cave entrance fluctuated again, and the fluctuations of the seawater were getting stronger and stronger. Obviously, the number of Asuras that appeared this time was definitely not as simple as a dozen. The surrounding seawater was still calm, as if there was not the slightest clue at all, indicating that Lu Ping had already set up an inescapable net here. Whoosh! More than 20 minor repairs Azuras rushed out of the cave entrance and rushed in all directions. Immediately afterward, more than 30 minor repairs Azuras surrounded by 7 or 8 great Azuras rushed out of the cave. This was not the end. After the 7 or 8 great Azuras commanded their minor repairs Azuras to occupy their respective positions, another team of minor repairs Azuras and minor repairs Azuras rushed out of the cave one after another. There were about 100 of them in total. The seawater in the cave entrance was still surging. Obviously, there were more Mara following behind. Judging from the aura emitted from inside, there were probably several great Mara whose cultivation had reached the core forging stage. The strange calmness of the cave entrance and the appearance of a large number of Mara seemed to make many Mara feel that the murderer did not dare to provoke them at this time. They must have gone far away, so they inevitably lowered their vigilance. However, right at this moment, 12 beams of dazzling 5-colored light suddenly shone in the ice-cold seawater. Right when the over 100 Maras were at a loss of what to do, a huge refining phantom suddenly bloomed in the seawater above the cave. Streams of mysterious runes faintly connected with the 12 pearls that were emitting 5-colored light in the surroundings. A Mara whose cultivation had reached the late core forging stage roared loudly, as if to remind the surrounding Mara to be vigilant. The surrounding Mara did indeed move, but then more and more Mara let out panicked roars. When the nearly 200 Mara moved in the seawater, they suddenly found that the seawater around them had become abnormally viscous. Not only did it consume a lot of strength to move, but it also became increasingly slow. In the seawater above, there was a white jade lotus that emitted a misty white light after it bloomed. It seemed to be constantly swaying along with the turbulence of the seawater. The mysterious runes that formed this illusory image seemed to be a lotus and also seemed to be a picture. At this moment, the 12 beads emitting 5-colored rays of light in the surroundings moved. With the refining phantom reflected in the seawater as the center, the 12 beads fiercely shot out in all directions, drawing a 5-colored halo in the seawater. Almost every time a halo passed by, the bodies of several Mara would be pierced by the beads, and they would completely turn into streams of rich spirit chi in the seawater. It was unknown when, but in the middle of the huge white jade lotus phantom above the seawater, a huge wine cup appeared in the lotus. After the Mara was pierced by the gentian beads, its body had turned into streams of spirit chi and unknowingly gathered in the wine cauldron above the seawater. In the seawater, the screams of nearly 200 Mara when they died not only did not scare the large group of Mara that was rushing out of the cave, but it also made them rush out of the cave even faster. Nearly 200 Azuras were instantly annihilated by the gentian formation set up by Lu Ping, and under Lu Ping's deliberate control, none of those great Azuras at the core forging stage could survive. The 40 to 50 Mara that were lucky enough to survive had not yet escaped the shroud of the huge white jade lotus above their heads, but they suddenly noticed a cold undercurrent surging in the seawater around them. Before these Mara could react, the 4 flying swords had already divided into hundreds of sword chis, completely sealing the space around the gentian formation. In an instant, the dozens of small Mara that were lucky enough to escape were all turned into broken limbs. In the blink of an eye, only over 100 small Mara died so easily under the gentian formation and sword formation that Lu Ping had carefully set up. Not only did Lu Ping not expect this, even Imo Luo, who was in a hurry to rush out of the cave, didn't expect this either. Otherwise, they wouldn't have rushed out of the cave so easily. Instead, they would have waited for Lu Ping to find them while they had the geographical advantage. Over 100 Mara rushed out of the cave under the leadership of a dozen great Mara at the core forging stage. However, what appeared in front of them were dense spiritual chi of various attributes in the seawater and the remains of over 100 Mara that had not had time to melt. At the instant the 100 or so Mara charged out of the cave, they felt as if they had jumped into a pot of thick soup, and it was difficult for them to even take a single step forward. Some of them turned around and wanted to escape back into the cave, but it was already too late. The gentian formation was launched again, and the sword formation set up by the 4 spirit cultivation flying swords surrounded and killed the fish that escaped the net. In a moment, these great Azuras were all beheaded, and the remaining few small Mara were just some shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Lu Ping just shook a few hand signs, and with a flash of blue light in the seawater, their chests all collapsed, and they could not be more dead. The death of nearly 400 Mara accounted for half of the strength of the previous defeated Mara, and there were no more Mara in the cave. Lu Ping appeared from the seawater, and his divine will stretched out to explore the cave. Suddenly, he felt several strange divine wills surrounding Lu Ping's divine will. Lu Ping laughed coldly in his heart. He knew that this was the Mara in the cave. After discovering that the cave entrance had been sealed by their incomparable strength, the few core forging demonic cultivators had turned their attention to the confrontation of their divine wills. However, they did not know that Lu Ping's own divine will was already at the level of a mid-Dharma adept. Now that he had the cloud sail to protect him, he did not care about the soul-devouring magic that these core-forging demonic cultivators had used. Lu Ping's figure turned into water, and the 4 flying swords and the Gentian formation were all wrapped up by Lu Ping in the water, and he went deeper into the cave. Behind Lu Ping, a huge black shadow quickly descended from the top of the cave. Dong! There was a muffled sound, and the huge mountain collapsed, completely pressing down on the cave entrance. At the same time, it completely blocked off the escape route of the Mara in the cave. Chapter 933. Lu Ping blocked the exit of the cave with landslide. He had just walked a few feet inside when he noticed that there was a slight fluctuation in the water beside his ear. 2 great Shuras, whose cultivation was equivalent to the late core forging stage, had already attacked Lu Ping from both sides. However, although the 2 water Shura's escape technique was wonderful, Lu Ping's cultivation was stronger. Before the 2 Shuras could reach him, they found that the seawater in front of them had become in a state of spurting outward. This huge force even made the 2 Shuras unable to move a step forward with their water escape technique. The 2 Shuras immediately realized that something was wrong, but before they could retreat, 2 flying swords had already rushed out of the rapidly spurting water and stabbed at the 2 Shuras. After all, the 2 Shuras' cultivation was still there. They used their companion magic weapons to block the Autumn Beauty Sword. Originally, they wanted to take advantage of the blocking force to retreat, but unexpectedly, the water that was originally spurting outward had already divided into several thin streams, like ropes, binding the 2 Shuras' limbs. The 2 great Azuras turned pale with fright. But then, their bound limbs suddenly turned into water, and Lu Ping's water manipulation technique lost its target. He was greatly surprised. It was not that Lu Ping had never encountered this kind of magic power. Even when he usually used the water escape technique, he often turned into water. However, with his current strength, there were few Shuras of the same level who could use the water transformation technique to escape from his water manipulation technique. However, these 2 Shuras managed to do so. However, through the exchange just now, Lu Ping could clearly feel that although the 2 Shuras' cultivation was equivalent to the late core forging stage, their strength might not be outstanding. Although Lu Ping was surprised, he naturally did not intend to let these 2 Shuras go. 2 thunderbolts were shot out from Lu Ping's fingertips, and suddenly the 2 Shuras' skin was torn and their flesh was torn, and they screamed miserably. The magical power of water thunder that Lu Ping practiced was a magic that even Blood Shura was afraid of. It was naturally not a problem to use it against these 2 great Shuras. Lu Ping took the opportunity to use the twin flying swords to decapitate the 2 Shuras, and then with a wave of his hands, Linglong's wine cauldron appeared in the cave and swallowed the 2 water Shura's bodies that had not yet melted. Lu Ping stretched out his hand to cut open a space crack and released Samling, Dague, and Lu Qiner from the Golden House. Although this cave had been opened up by Mara, it was actually not very large. Just now, Lu Ping's divine telekinesis had almost explored all the passages in the cave, and he did not find the presence of the blood Mara that Lu Ping was afraid of. There were 300 to 500 Shuras gathered in the cave, but at this time, they were hiding in the maze like stray dogs. Just now, Lu Ping's divine telekinesis had frightened this group of Mara, and the invasion of Lu Ping's divine telekinesis had caused a few great devil cultivators to use their soul-devouring magic, but they could not hurt Lu Ping at all. Instead, they were seriously injured by Lu Ping's divine telekinesis. This made Mara, who was hiding in the cave, feel despair. Since he had already found out the strength of these Mara, Lu Ping was naturally not interested in finding them one by one and killing them. Therefore, he called out Samling and the others, and handed the task of killing Mara to them. Under Lu Ping's instructions, Samling had already slowed down the growth of his cultivation as much as possible, and focused most of his energy on strengthening his foundation. However, his cultivation had already reached the 8th stage of the core forging realm. With Samling's top-tier bloodline of the green sea snake, although he could not possibly have the same level of strength as Lu Ping, it was almost impossible for an ordinary practitioner at the peak of the core forging realm to win against them. Moreover, if the three of them joined forces, even an early Dharma adept would not be able to gain the upper hand against them. As for Lu Daguay, although his cultivation was slightly weaker, he had already reached the 4th stage of the core forging realm. He had extremely strong defensive abilities. If he were to fight with someone, he might not be a match for a practitioner of the same level, but when it came to taking a beating, perhaps even a practitioner at the 6th stage of the core forging realm would not be able to hurt him at all. Lu Ping had always wanted to go to the South Sea. In addition to wanting to experience the customs of the South Sea's cultivation world, the practitioners of the Ba Gui clan, the only direct bloodline left behind by Taoist Gui, were also a unique sight in the South Sea. Lu Daguay could barely be considered a mid-tier monster. After refining a type of demon turtle bloodline that was related to the Ba Gui clan during the blood condensation realm, his grade had risen to the level of a high-tier monster. Otherwise, Lu Ping would not have allowed him to participate in the mission of encircling and killing Mara in this cave. Lu Qiner originally did not want to come out. After Lu Ping broke the restriction at the entrance, the cave had long been submerged in seawater. Lu Qiner cultivated both wind and fire. Originally, fighting at the bottom of the sea was not her forte. However, she was currently at the 8th stage of the core forging realm like Samling. In fact, she had even advanced to the 8th stage before Samling. Her strength was also comparable to Samling's. Although the environment at the bottom of the sea affected her strength, it was not too serious. After Lu Ping released everyone, he let them do whatever they wanted. Except for Daguay and Lu Qiner, Samling acted alone. As for Lu Ping himself, he followed the direction of the source of the large spirit vein. Although this cave extended in all directions, it was like a tree branch with a main branch. This branch was the source of the large spirit vein on the treasure ship. At the source, there was an invisible restriction that separated the cave from the source. Lu Ping reached out and pressed hard on the restriction. A bluish-purple light quickly spread around Lu Ping's palm. However, Lu Ping's bluish-purple inner yuan only spread to a radius of a foot before the restriction was surrounded by a white halo. Then, the halo converged toward the center. The bluish-purple inner yuan that Lu Ping had produced was suddenly squeezed and finally returned to his palm. Lu Ping's palm shook violently, and his whole body was shaken back 2 or 3 steps before he could stand firm. There was a look of shock on his face. If this restriction was really set up by Blood Shura or Blood Demon, it would not be so strong. Then the identity of the creator of Mara's lair was obvious. It had to be at least a Jade Shura. During the Battle of Frost Island, there were only 4 Jade Shuras in Mara's army. Now, they were all being hunted down by the mid-Dharma adepts of the North Sea. No one knew which of the 4 Jade Shuras this lair belonged to. As for the possibility that this lair had been created by Azura, although it was impossible, in the tens of thousands of years since the great calamity of the cultivation world, there had been many Blood Shura and Jade Shura lairs, but no one had ever found an Azura's lair. Lu Ping did not think that he would be so lucky as to find an Azura's lair that had never appeared in the cultivation world. Now that he knew the identity of the Azura who had set up this restriction, Lu Ping had a way to deal with it. There was a flash of light in his hand, and a 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman appeared in Lu Ping's hand. He slapped it on the layer of restriction. It was not that the restriction set up by the Jade Shura was difficult to break, but that the Jade Shura's restriction was connected to the source of the large spirit vein behind it. That was why Lu Ping had no choice but to use a precious 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman. Hopefully, The source of this large spirit vein had something that would make Lu Ping use the 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman. The 5-colored light spread quickly on the light screen, and then the light suddenly became so bright that it destroyed the layer of light in an instant. Lu Ping was about to walk behind the restriction when he shouted, "Oh no!" He saw dozens of sure-ass hiding behind the layer of restriction shout and attack Lu Ping with their accompanying treasures and half-life ritual implements. Although this light screen could block Lu Ping and Lu Ping's divine telekinesis, it did not seem to stop Mara from entering. Lu Ping did not expect there to be so many Mara hiding behind the light screen. When the restriction light screen was opened, he almost fell into their trap. Fortunately, Lu Ping did not want to use the water moon pearl, so he put the cloud sail on his body to resist the water pressure at the bottom of the sea. The dozens of attacks hit Lu Ping at the same time. In the past, Lu Ping would have been seriously injured, but now he had the cloud sail, which was a thunder spirit treasure, to protect him. The attacks that hit Lu Ping only made him angry. Even so, Lu Ping was already angry. If it was not for the cloud sail, Lu Ping would have suffered a loss. He stretched out his hand and patted his chest. The 7 thunder treasures calabash soared into the air and attacked the dozens of Mara that were in chaos after seeing that Lu Ping was unharmed. Although the 7 thunder treasures calabash had not condensed the 7th spirit cultivation restriction, and the thunder spirit technique of the 7 thunder treasures calabash had not reached the level of a great spirit technique, but its power could not be underestimated. Not to mention, the 7 bolts of lightning struck together. In an instant, the dozens of Mara were shrouded in it. The small Mara, whose cultivation had not reached the core forging stage, could not even withstand a single one of the lightning. Even the big Mara could not withstand 3 or 4 bolts of such dense lightning. Only a few great Azuras at the late core forging stage were able to escape from the 7 thunder treasures calabash. However, Lu Ping shook the 7 thunder treasures calabash, and a bolt of 7-colored divine lightning shot out. The few great Azuras immediately vanished into thin air. At this time, Linglong jumped out from behind Lu Ping. She pointed to a blue liquid in a small pool not far away and shouted, "Ha, the origin essence." Lu Ping was startled. He found that his body was surrounded by a rich spiritual energy. He looked up and saw that there was a small pool at the source of the spirit vein. The small pool was filled with a milky white liquid. It was the spirit vein essence milk, a high-grade heaven step spirit treasure. However, Lu Ping, who had seen the spirit vein essence milk, did not arouse much interest in Lu Ping. What really excited Lu Ping was the fist-sized blue liquid in the center of the spirit vein essence milk. It was the origin essence of the water attribute. Chapter 934. Origin Essence. Not only Linglong, but Ru Yu also came out of the golden house and walked quickly behind Linglong towards the small pool. Lu Ping suddenly thought of something. He strode forward and pushed the 2 artifact spirits to the side. Then, he took out a jade essence bottle from his storage mystic instrument and carefully stored away the ball of origin essence wrapped in the spirit vein milk. This was the origin essence that had no owner. It was much richer and purer than the origin essence that Linglong had collected from the fallen blood Shura. Its effects were more miraculous, and it could be preserved for a long period of time. Lu Ping stuck 3 spirit-sealing talismans on the full bottle of origin essence. Then he turned to look at a very dissatisfied device spirit behind him. She pouted so much that she could hang an oil bottle on her mouth, and another device spirit with a face full of hidden bitterness. The conditions for the origin essence without an owner were extremely harsh. The origin essence itself contained the essence of spiritual chi from the spiritual vein and the spirituality of heaven and earth treasures. Therefore, it was usually bred in high-grade heaven and earth treasures. Moreover, the formation of these heaven and earth treasures was directly related to the spiritual vein. It could be said that the bigger the spiritual vein and the higher the grade of heaven and earth treasures, the more likely it was to breed origin essence. It was even more precious than heaven and earth treasures. Not only could the origin essence be used to greatly enhance one's cultivation, but it could also be used to enhance the spirituality of the Thunder Retribution spiritual treasure. The level of spirituality of the device spirit directly affected the success or failure of the Thunder Retribution spiritual treasure. This was why Linglong and Ruyu rushed forward at the same time when they saw the origin essence. Although Ruyu was not the device spirit of the treasure, she was the guardian device spirit of the treasure ship. The enhancement of her spirituality would also be of great benefit to her and her future master of the treasure ship. However, the two had obviously underestimated Lu Ping's greed for the origin essence. How could Lu Ping let Linglong and Ruyu obtain something that could directly enhance one's cultivation? He would not even have enough for himself. However, when Lu Ping saw their expressions, he felt a little embarrassed in his heart. He smiled and said, all right, I'll give each of you a drop in the future." Ruyu smiled and thanked him. Although Linglong was somewhat reluctant, having a drop was better than not having a drop at all. However, she did not dare to act spoiled in front of Lu Ping, so she could only agree with a sullen face. After dismissing the two artifact spirits, Lu Ping turned around and put away the spirit vein essence milk in the small pool. If it weren't for the dual nourishment of this large spirit vein and the heaven high-grade water attribute Fei, how could Lu Ping have obtained such a large portion of water attribute origin essence that suited Lu Ping? The Jade Shura had used a restriction to seal the source of the spirit vein. It must have been because she wanted this origin essence. If she used it herself, with her cultivation at the mid-Dharma stage, the effect would not be too obvious. But if she gave it to one of her Shuras, she might be able to produce a blood Mara immediately. The Jade Shura had never used this origin essence, and that was what she had in mind. It was a shame that Lu Ping had benefited from it. There were loud sounds of fighting coming from the cave. With Samling and Lu Qiner's power, they would soon be able to clear out the remnants of Mara in the cave. Lu Ping could even sense that there were already a few Mara that had snuck near the entrance of the cave. They wanted to push away the landslide that Lu Ping had placed at the entrance of the cave and escape. Unfortunately, these Mara were all Shuras that were equivalent to core forging adepts, and yet they were unable to push away the landslide at all. Instead, they revealed their location to Lu Ping. Lu Ping told Linglong to take care of this large spirit vein, so that it wouldn't be affected by other veins or land veins in the future. At the same time, he brought out Dabeo, who was hiding in the House of Gold and unwilling to come out. Even with the protection of Lu Ping's inner yuan, Dabeo still choked on some water when he came out. He barely managed to put up a protective barrier, but it was only enough to ensure his breathing. "Boss, why is it at the bottom of the sea again?" "Nonsense. Most of the cultivation resources in the overseas cultivation world are at the bottom of the sea." Lu Ping stuffed the water-repelling pearl into Dabeo's mouth without any explanation. Then, he pushed him into the earth vein at the bottom of the sea. He then released the water nether sword and returned to the entrance of the cave to kill all the Mara that were still pushing away the landslide with all their might. After that, Lu Ping scanned the cave with his divine sense. When he discovered that there were no more traces of the powerful Mara in the cave, he opened the House of Gold again and released Wang Qi. During the chaotic battle on Frost Island, Lu Ping had seen Mara destroy the Dao Soldier formation of Wang Qi's team. Wang Qi himself had been surrounded by several Shuras at the time. Although he knew that Wang Qi still had a life-saving method that Lu Ping had given him, he still took him into the House of Gold just in case. At this time, the powerful Mara in the cave had been eliminated by the Samling. Even if there were some great Shuras among the Mara that had escaped, they were only at the early or middle stage of the core forging realm. With Wang Qi's current level of cultivation, he could easily deal with them. It was the perfect place to train his cultivation. If this wasn't the lair of a Jade Shura, and if the Jade Shura hadn't broken through the encirclement of the sects in the North Sea and returned, this place would have been a secret cultivation ground with the support of such a large spirit vein. Lu Ping stayed in the cave for half a day, but he didn't personally attack Mara in the cave. Instead, he looked around the cave, but he didn't find anything special. But when Dabeo came out of the spirit vein, he brought Lu Ping disappointing news. This large spirit vein that had been submerged in the sea for 4,000 years had not produced a single spirit-gathering orb. Linglong said, "Master, don't forget that this spirit vein is Mara's lair. Mara devours spirits, and they have the same talent as Debeo in finding spirits. Their talent might even be better than Debeo's. Otherwise, why would Mara's lair be found near spirit veins or spirit stone mines? The spirit pulse hasn't been wiped out by the Mara race, and that's because of the Jade Shura. But if you want them to keep the spirit orbs in the spirit pulse, it's going to be hard on them. Lu Ping thought Linglong's words made sense, so he waved his hand and took Debeo, who didn't want to stay in the sea any longer, into the golden house. At this time, Lu Ping felt something. When he looked down, he saw a jade charm on his waist shatter. Lu Ping's face changed, and he quickly called Samling, Lu Qiner, Wang Qi, and De Gue to the entrance of the cave. Before Sanling and the others could ask for the reason, Lu Ping had already opened the door of the golden house and stuffed them inside. He then waved his hand and put away the landslide at the entrance of the golden house. After that, he turned into a stream of water and used the water escape technique to pass through the hole created by the treasure ship. However, he didn't go back the way he came from. Instead, he changed directions and traveled dozens of miles away. At this time, a strong aura suddenly exploded from the hole where the treasure ship had sunk behind Lu Ping. It seemed to contain infinite anger, but the aura only flashed for a moment, as if it was afraid of something. Lu Ping sighed in his heart. If he hadn't been careful and laid down dozens of warning charms along the way, the Jade Shura would have been able to detect or avoid most of them. But if one was triggered, Lu Ping would have had a chance to escape before it returned to its lair. Otherwise, he would have been caught by the Jade Shura instead. Lu Ping didn't have a choice. Although the Jade Shura was afraid that the human and demon cultivators would discover its nest and wouldn't dare to hunt down the intruders, Lu Ping didn't dare to go back to the treasure ship to check out the Jade Shura. After coming out of the sea, Lu Ping didn't dare to stop at all. The ship drew a thick, bluish-purple line under his feet, and he flew back to Frost Island at almost full speed. In the Battle of Frost Island, Mara's army had failed because of the unexpected alliance between the humans and demons. But the humans and demons struck while the iron was hot and wanted to eliminate the root of the problem. Even if they couldn't eliminate Mara's disaster while it was still budding, they wanted to greatly weaken the disaster this time. Therefore, after Mara's defeat, the human and demon cultivators, including the Dharma adepts, continued to chase and kill the fleeing Mara tribe. After Lu Ping returned to Frost Island, there were a total of 3 Jinling Dharma Laozu guarding Frost Island. Tian Shu Laozu was in charge of dispatching and guarding, while Tianlu Laozu had specially rushed to Frost Island from Tianling Mountain to treat Tiancheng Laozu's injuries. After Lu Ping returned to Frost Island, Tian Shu Laozu let out a sigh of relief. At this time, most of the Dharma adepts had already gone out to kill Mara's remnants. Frost Island could be considered to be empty now. Although there were 3 Dharma Laozu guarding Jinling, Tiancheng Laozu had not recovered from his injuries, and Tian Shu Laozu also knew that he was not strong enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't be guarding Frost Island. The others were all out to kill Mara's remnants. As for Tianlu Laozu, he was originally an alchemist. His advancement to the Dharma stage was a trick, so his strength was at most equal to Tian Shu Laozu's, or maybe even weaker. After the battle on Frost Island, the relationship between Lu Ping and Tian Shu Laozu had somewhat eased. Lu Ping's strength was already obvious to all. With 2 spirit treasures in hand and 4 flying swords, he was someone that even Blood Shura dared to fight alone. With this kind of strength, even a mid-Dharma adept like Lu Ping would not be able to do anything to him. After seeing Tian Shu Laozu, Lu Ping had no time to care about the previous awkwardness between them. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Uncle Master, is Uncle Master Tian Xiang around?" Tian Shu Laozu knew that Lu Ping's position in the sect was probably higher than his. For him to ask about Tian Xiang Laozu's whereabouts in such a hurry, there must be something extremely important. Thus, he did not ask Lu Ping for the reason and said, "Uncle Master Tian Xiang, Daosheng Laozu, and the 2 great adepts of the primordial crocodile clan have joined forces to kill that Azura. Until now, there has been no news. However, Uncle Master Tian Kong, Uncle Master Tian Shui, and Master Tian Fan Laozu can be contacted." As expected, Lu Ping nodded and said, "If the 3 Uncle Masters have no urgent matters to attend to, please send a message to ask them to return." Chapter 935. Although the North Sea cultivators won the battle on Frost Island, it was a Pyrrhic victory. Due to Jinling's strong foundation and the fact that a large number of cultivators were stationed on Frost Island, the number of casualties was kept to a minimum. The losses suffered by the other sects could only be described as bone-deep. Jinling guarded the largest area on Frost Island, so they suffered the most casualties. Almost half of the 1,000 blood condensation disciples died, and more than a third of the 100 core forging cultivators died. At the same time, they also lost a Dharma adept, the Heaven Attainment Laozu, who lost his last chance to advance to the mid-Dharma stage due to severe injuries to his core. Jinling's losses were already so severe. Even if the other sect's casualties were lighter than Jinling's, they did not have Jinling's foundation to squander. After all, 30 to 50 core forging cultivators were only a tenth of Jinling's total core forging cultivators. If the other sects had a third or even half of their total core forging cultivators, this was a devastating blow to the sections. Especially at the last moment of the Frost Island's grand formation, Mara's army gave up on Jinling's stronghold and began to attack the Spirit Stone Mine at the center of Frost Island. After the protective barrier was broken, the cultivators from the other sects paid a devastating price in order to stop Mara's army from entering the Spirit Stone Mine. As a result, after Mara's army was defeated, the other sects and major forces could not spare enough forces to guard and surround Mara, who had taken advantage of the chaos to hide in the Spirit Stone Mine. Jinling took the opportunity to send spiritual master Xian San and a group of Jinling cultivators into the Spirit Stone Mine to eliminate Mara. Then, Jinling immediately sent a group of blood condensation disciples, led by a few core forging cultivators from Tianling Mountain, to the Spirit Stone Mine. By the time reinforcements from the other sects arrived and began to eliminate Mara, Jinling had already occupied half of the Spirit Stone Mine. Naturally, Jinling would not accept this as a fait accompli, but at least Jinling had reaped enough benefits in the process of eliminating Mara. Although the other sects were secretly unhappy, the most important thing now was to chase after the fleeing Mara. In the entire North Sea, other than Jinling, no other sect could guarantee that they would have enough forces to continue eliminating Mara in the Spirit Stone Mine while chasing after Mara. The other sects could only watch as Jinling secretly reaped all the benefits. After Tian Shu Laozu sent out the sound transmission sword, Jinling and the other two mid-Dharma adepts did not know how long it would take for them to return. Thus, Lu Ping hurriedly walked towards the secret chamber of the palace. Unexpectedly, along the way, he happened to see Zhang Xuanqing leading a group of fourth-generation blood condensation disciples out of the teleportation portal. Lu Ping immediately saw Du Jialua among the group of fourth-generation disciples. This time, Lu Ping did not avoid the others. After greeting Zhenren Zhang Xuanqing, he called Du Jialua aside under the envious gazes of the other fourth-generation disciples. "Where are your senior brother Zhang, senior brother Fong, and senior sister Fong?" Previously, Lu Ping had sent the three of them to Huanyu Island, where the ruins of the vast sea relic were located, to collect a few rare spiritual materials that they had missed. Now, it was obvious that the four of them had completed the task that Lu Ping had given them. Seeing that Du Jialua was alone, Lu Ping opened his mouth and asked about the whereabouts of the other three. Du Jialua took out a storage bag and handed it to Lu Ping. Then, he said, "The three senior brothers and senior sisters are now in closed-door training. I estimate that when they come out, they will already be Zhenren in the core forging stage." Lu Ping nodded, but his face did not show any expression. Instead, he thought of Du Jialua and asked, "You are now at the 9th level of the core forging stage. Why didn't you go into closed-door training with them?" Du Jialua answered honestly, "I feel that my foundation is not yet solid enough, so I want to make my cultivation more solid." Lu Ping nodded to himself. Although the Fong siblings and Zhang Wu were also brave and determined to improve, in the process of training, they often did not need a reasonable increase in their cultivation level. Cultivation was always a process of repeated competition between one's lifespan and one's cultivation base. This was also the reason why many cultivators in the cultivation world held a reasonable but rapid increase in cultivation base. As long as it did not affect one's own cultivation base, the pursuit of cultivation speed would always be the main theme of cultivators' cultivation. After all, only by increasing one's cultivation level would a cultivator have more lifespan and energy to break through the next bottleneck. The time that a cultivator saved before breaking through each bottleneck could be used up during the next breakthrough. Therefore, all cultivators had to shorten the cultivation time before breaking through each bottleneck as much as possible in order to prepare for emergencies. However, in Lu Ping's view, the true wisdom of cultivators did not lie in shortening the cultivation time needed for a breakthrough as much as possible. Instead, it lay in the courage to give up. Give up on the cultivation level that could have been broken through a long time ago, and give up on the cultivation time that could have been saved. And these abandoned times should be used to polish one's own foundation, to strengthen one's own foundation. As the saying goes, sharpening a knife does not delay the work of cutting firewood. However, everyone understood this principle, but which cultivator could truly let go and wholeheartedly use time to polish their foundation? Most people found it difficult to find a balance between the two. In the past, Wang Qi's cultivation level had already reached the peak of the blood condensation realm. However, he had been stuck there for decades, unable to break through to the core forging realm. He wanted to lay down a solid foundation. The Fang siblings and Tsang Wu could not compare to Wang Qi in terms of cultivation level and aptitude. Now, they had to blindly pursue the growth of their cultivation level. With Lu Ping's help, the three of them might be able to successfully advance to the core forging realm. However, compared to Wang Qi, their future path would only get narrower and narrower. On the contrary, although Du Jialua was also a genius who cultivated earth attribute techniques, he was able to patiently polish his cultivation level. If he did not die prematurely in the future, his achievements would be limitless. Lu Ping clapped his hands, and Debao walked out from behind Lu Ping. Du Jialua's eyes lit up, and he said, "Marshal Uncle Debao." Lu Ping said, "I heard that there are more than 1,000 devil luos swarming into the spirit stone mine this time. Although these demonic cultivators don't have the strength to completely destroy the spirit stone mine, they will more or less cause some damage to the spirit stone mine. Although it's a training mission for the disciples like you, it's also very dangerous. This time, your martial uncle Debao will go with you." Du Jialua nodded, and then he heard Lu Ping say, "Although there are enlightened masters in the spirit stone mine, the mine is crisscrossed. Even a core forging master will find it difficult to take care of everything. You must remember that the enemy in the spirit stone mine is not only Mara, but also cultivators from other sections. As the saying goes, do not have the heart to harm others, but do not have the heart to let them go. Sometimes, cultivators from other sects may be even more vicious than Mara." Debao turned around, and a yellow smoke dispersed. The spirit-seeking mouse shrank to the size of a palm and scuttled into Du Jialua's sleeve. After sending Du Jialua away, Lu Ping walked into the secret room and took out the interspatial mystic artifact he obtained from the treasure ship's secret cabin. Hua. Lu Ping poured out everything in the storage mystic instrument. But other than some spirit materials, mystic instruments, a few low-grade mystic treasures, and a few jade slips that Lu Ping wasn't interested in, there was almost nothing else in the storage mystic instrument. Lu Ping thought about it. After this cultivator was sealed in the secret cabin, in order to maintain his life and cultivation, all the elixirs, spiritual herbs, spirit stones, and other things that could be eaten and used for cultivation were used up by the friar. In the end, he did not escape the fate of death, and there were only these bits and pieces left in the storage magic tool. Lu Ping used his hand to push the pile of things, and there was a clang. Lu Ping looked over and found that there was nothing on the ground. Where did the sound come from? A cyan light lit up in Lu Ping's eyes, and a looming flying sword outline appeared in front of Lu Ping. Invisible flying sword? Lu Ping was overjoyed. So there was this kind of luck. Lu Ping stretched out his hand, and the flying sword immediately flew into Lu Ping's hand. Bluish-purple vital energy surged into the flying sword. The flying sword was dyed by the vital energy, and it revealed its original form in front of Lu Ping. Unfortunately, it was only an invisible flying sword with 4 treasures. Its quality was not even as good as the water ghost sword. The enthusiasm in Lu Ping's heart was inevitably extinguished, but when he saw the jade slips on the ground, the flames of hope in Lu Ping's heart rose again. As expected, After Lu Ping crushed the 3 jade slips, he finally found what he wanted in the 4th jade slip, the complete inheritance of the invisible sword art, including the invisible sword secret art, the method to refine the invisible sword, and a total of 9 treasures. It was the treasure that Lu Ping had been seeking for decades. Lu Ping was immediately overjoyed, and then he patiently looked through the remaining 2 jade slips. In the end, a trace of surprise appeared on his face, and he finally kept the last jade slip. After looking through the storage artifact, Lu Ping took out the small bottle of water attribute origin essence that he had obtained in the Azura's lair. When Lu Ping had killed the Blood Azura in the Battle of Frost Island, he had absorbed a trace of water attribute origin essence through Linglong. However, just this trace of essence had saved Lu Ping almost 3 years of cultivation. Now, this small bottle full of origin essence could push Lu Ping's cultivation all the way to that realm? Lu Ping stretched out his finger and carefully drew a small drop of origin essence from the jade bottle into his palm. Then, Lu Ping put his palms together, and a blue light immediately flashed between his palms. He began to refine this origin essence. In the blink of an eye, another half a day had passed. Just as Lu Ping finished refining this origin essence, Lu Ping could clearly feel that his cultivation had increased significantly. At this moment, a crack appeared in front of Lu Ping, and a sound transmission talisman appeared from the crack. Lu Ping took the sound transmission talisman and listened for a moment. Then, he stood up and walked out of the secret room. Chapter 936. Kid, why did you call us back in such a hurry? In the Ice Palace, Tian Fan, Tian Shui, and Tian Kong, the 3 mid-Dharma Jinling Laozu, saw Lu Ping enter in a hurry. Tian Kong Laozu was the first to speak. We finally found traces of a blood Shura a few thousand miles away. We were about to chase after it, but Tian Shu called us back with a message glyph. That blood Shura could mean that we have a companion spiritual treasure. During the Battle of Frost Island and the days after that, the Sea Fire sect had killed a blood Shura and obtained a companion spiritual treasure. Then, it was said that 4 of the 12 small forces Dharma Laozu had joined forces to kill a blood Shura and obtained a companion spiritual treasure. However, 2 of the Dharma Laozu had been severely injured by the Shura's self-destruction before it died. Before and after the Battle of Jinling, including the blood Shura that Lu Ping had killed, a total of 1 jade Shura, 2 blood Shuras, and 1 blood demon had died by Jinling's hand. His battle record was the most glorious among all the sects in the North Sea. Even among the demons, perhaps only the primordial crocodile clan could compare to Jinling. However, what made Patriarch Tian Kong angry was that Jinling's sect had not obtained a single perfect companion spiritual treasure. This included the Jade Shura that Patriarch Tian Kong and the other 2 mid-Dharma adepts had killed. When they had killed the demonic Shura, their companion spiritual treasures had also been destroyed. At most, they had obtained some broken pieces of their spiritual treasures to improve the quality of their spiritual treasures. Lu Ping smiled slightly and said, "Master Uncle, how is the trail of a Jade Shura?" Old Ancestor Tian Kong was stunned when he heard that. Even Old Ancestor Tian Fan and Old Ancestor Tian Shui looked at Lu Ping in astonishment. "You found traces of Jade Shura, and that is why you asked Sky Technique to summon us back?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "I'm afraid we'll need Elder Master Tian Xiang this time. The Jade Shura is just a bonus. It's a pity that Martial Uncle Tian Lin isn't here. Otherwise, with the help of Martial Uncle Tian Lin, this mission would be foolproof." The 3 Laozus frowned. According to what Lu Ping had said, he wanted to gather all of Jinling's best fighters. Did Lu Ping not only find 1 Jade Shura, but 2? However, the 3 of them knew that Lu Ping wasn't someone who spoke without thinking. So, Tian Kong Laozu immediately waved his hand and said, "Kid, what exactly is it? Don't beat around the bush." Lu Ping smiled awkwardly before he said seriously, "I found the wreckage of Fei Ling's sect's treasured ship that sank at the bottom of the ocean." Pooh. Tian Fan Laozu, who had just drunk a mouthful of hot tea, didn't even have time to swallow it. He asked anxiously, "What? Where? How did you find it?" Tan Shui Laozu, who was beside him, looked at Tian Fan Laozu unhappily and said, "If that's the case, we should ask senior brother Tian Xiang to come back and take charge." At this time, Tian Fan Laozu also calmed down and nodded. That's right. If it's really a treasured ship, just raising it from the bottom of the ocean would require a great cultivator to do it. If junior sister Tian Shui and the old man were to work together, they might be able to do it. But if we want to hide it from the North Sea sects and the Demon Clan, and secretly escort it to Tianling Mountain, we'll need senior brother Tian Xiang to do it. Tian Kong Laozu was already impatient. With a flip of his wrist, a purple magic sword appeared in his hand. He said, "Then what are we waiting for?" The old man will use the magic sword to summon senior brother Tian Xiang. Tian Fan Laozu stretched out his hand to stop Tian Kong Laozu. He said, "There's no hurry. Senior brother Tian Xiang is currently working with 3 other great cultivators to kill Azura. There's still no news of Azura until now. I think Azura is still fighting with them. If senior brother Tian Xiang suddenly stops, not only will the other great cultivators not agree to it, but Azura might also turn around and attack them one by one. The place where the treasured ship sunk without being discovered for 4,000 years must be an extremely secretive place. We're not in a hurry to avoid attracting the attention of the other sects." In fact, Tian Fan Laozu still had a hidden meaning. After all, Azura was the main culprit of Mara's calamity on Frost Island. If they couldn't kill it or severely injure it, it would definitely make a comeback in the future and harm the cultivation world of the North Sea once again. Tian Kong Laozu helplessly put down the magic sword in his hand. Then, he thought of something and said, "Then why don't we work together to kill that Jade Azura first?" Tian Kong Laozu was still brooding over the fact that he couldn't get the companion's spiritual treasure from Mara. Tian Shui Laozu shook his head and said, "According to Martial Nephew Liu, that Jade Azura should be the water Azura that escaped from Feng Shutao and the others. That Azura saw the opportunity early and escaped without any injuries. The 3 of us working together might be able to defeat it, but it will definitely cause a huge commotion and attract the attention of other sects and demon race cultivators. At that time, it doesn't matter if the Jade Azura dies in our hands. If the location of the treasured ship's wreckage is exposed, it won't be worth it." Tian Kong Laozu was very disappointed when he heard that. At this time, the entire North Sea's cultivation world was moving to search for Mara's traces. If they were late, the Jade Azura might not even be able to hide in the lair. It should be known that Lu Ping had already alerted the Jade Azura when he sneaked into the lair. In the end, it was still Tian Shui Laozu who said, "No matter what, we still have to let senior brother Tianxiang know about this first. At the same time, we will also tell senior brother our thoughts. Whether or not he wants to return immediately, it will be up to him." Tian Kong Laozu was overjoyed when he heard that. The sword in his hand was already prepared. With a push, the sword pierced through the void and disappeared. Lu Ping returned to the secret chamber to continue refining the origin essence. During this time, Tianlu Laozu came by once. However, the 2 of them were helpless when it came to Tiancheng Laozu's damaged origin essence. In the end, they could only give up helplessly. A month later, a shocking piece of news swept through the entire North Sea's cultivation world. News came from the Deep Sea Demon region. During the battle between humans and demons against Mara, giant whale demon king Kongjing Laozu, who had not shown his face all this while, had successfully passed the second Thunder trial. He became the 5th Dharma adept in the entire North Sea's cultivation world. At the same time, he was also the 3rd Dharma adept in the demon race, and the 1st Dharma adept apart from the primordial crocodile clan. At this time, the humans and demons had joined forces to kill Mara. The news of 4 Dharma adepts chasing after Azura had also reached Kongjing Demon King's ears. Following that, Kongjing Demon King announced in a high-profile manner that he would help the other 4 Dharma adepts to kill Azura. No one knew how Kongjing Demon King found out about the whereabouts of the 4 Dharma adepts and rushed over alone. The emergence of a Dharma adept was enough to stir up the entire situation in the North Sea's cultivation world. Ever since Tian Xiang Laozu had advanced to the late Dharma stage, although the humans and demons were still in a state of roughly equal strength in the North Sea's cultivation world, the human race cultivators had long gained the upper hand in the overall situation. This was especially so with the rise of Zhenling. After Jinling had occupied Huangli Island, the demon race cultivators had repeatedly failed to take it down. If it weren't for the other sects in the North Sea having their own concerns and the fact that the humans were not united, the demon race would have long been suppressed by the human race cultivators to the point where they could not even lift their heads. However, after the battle on Frost Island, the human race cultivators had suffered heavy losses. The demon race, on the other hand, had been waiting at ease. Even if there were losses, it was because they had joined forces with the human race cultivators to hunt down Mara. Compared to the human race, the demon race's losses were undoubtedly much smaller. Fortunately, the demon race was not united. The giant whale demon clan was one of the only two top-tier demon clans in the North Sea. In the past, they had always been suppressed by the primordial crocodile clan. However, in the eyes of the giant whale demon clan, the primordial crocodile clan had always been an outsider, a stray dog that had fled to the North Sea after being defeated by the green sea snake in the East Sea. During the battle for the vast sea treasure, Demon King Kong Jing would rather join forces with Jinling than lend a hand to the primordial crocodile clan's Ao Dian Laozu. This was proof of this. Now that Demon King Kong Jing had become a Dharma adept, the human race would naturally take action. However, the demon race would also experience a redistribution of power. The real headache would be the primordial crocodile clan. After another month, the 5 Dharma adepts had returned to their respective sects and clans. The Azura had finally escaped, but its companion's spiritual treasure had also been destroyed by the 5 Dharma adepts. After being seriously injured, the Azura had escaped into the stormy ocean alone. The 5 great Laozu clans had no choice but to give up on the pursuit of the Azura. However, before the Azura had escaped into the stormy ocean, its source had been damaged by the 5 great Laozu clans, causing it to degenerate into a Jade Shura. Even if it returned to the North Sea, a Jade Shura without its companion's spiritual treasure would not be able to cause much trouble. The battle on Frost Island could be considered to have come to an end. In this battle, because the humans and demons had joined forces, a total of 1 Azura had been severely injured and demoted, 2 Jade Shuras had perished, and more than 10 Blood Mara clans had been killed by the humans and demons. As for the other Mara clan's army, the number of casualties was uncountable. As for the cultivation world of the North Sea, other than the huge losses suffered by the human race cultivators, the losses suffered by the demon race were initially negligible. However, on the eve of the return of the few great cultivators, a Dharma adept from the Walrus clan was ambushed when he went out to kill Amo Luo. He was surrounded and killed by the combined forces of a Blood Shura and a Blood Demon. More than 10 Walrus core forging cultivators and more than 100 blood condensation demonic beasts from the Walrus clan were slaughtered. The entire Walrus clan seemed to have suffered a devastating blow, casting a shadow over the great victory of the demon race this time. The various sects of the North Sea that had gathered on Frost Island, other than leaving behind the necessary cultivators to guard the place, began to leave one after another. Jinling was no exception. Other than the 2 Laozu clans, Tianshan and Tianshu, the other few Laozu clans led a portion of their disciples back to Jinling. In reality, not long after returning to Jinling, Tianxiang Laozu and the other 3 Middle Dharma adepts, Laozu clans, once again secretly snuck back to the depths of the sea hundreds of miles away from Frost Island. They began to secretly search for traces of the treasured shipwreckage and the Jade Shura's cave according to the address Lu Ping had left behind. At this time, Lu Ping was still in the secret room on Frost Island, cultivating in seclusion to refine the origin essence. By the time he had finished refining the small bottle of origin essence, Lu Ping had pushed his own cultivation all the way to the last step, and he had clearly begun to touch the barrier of the Dharma stage. In the core space, the huge golden Dan was only left with a thin layer, and the 9 seal patterns on the surface of the golden Dan had also become much fainter. Only the strange dragon was moving around in the golden Dan, as if it could break through the thin layer and appear in the core space at any time. Chapter 937. Lu Ping had been in seclusion on Frost Island for more than half a year. Because he had the help of the origin essence, the effect of this half a year of seclusion was equivalent to 20 to 30 years of cultivation. However, To be able to push Lu Ping's cultivation to the last step of the Dharma manifestation stage in just 20 to 30 years, it wasn't completely because of the origin essence. Around the huge golden core in Lu Ping's heart space, the innermost layer of the Dan Xia purple aura was still surrounding an indescribable thing. Before Lu Ping had reached the peak of the core forging stage, this layer had always been surrounding Lu Ping's golden core. Even when Lu Ping had reached the 9th grade golden core, it didn't have any effect at all. However, after Lu Ping had reached the 9th grade golden core, this layer seemed to have been awakened by the strange dragon within the golden core and started to be absorbed by the strange dragon through the golden core. Although the process was extremely slow, it had unwittingly affected Lu Ping's cultivation significantly. However, during the past 6 months of closed-door cultivation, Lu Ping was able to refine the origin essence at a much faster rate. Perhaps it was due to the origin essence's influence, but as he refined the origin essence, the strange Jiao's rate of absorption gradually increased. This was also the reason why Lu Ping was able to push his cultivation base to its current level in just half a year. This mysterious layer was none other than the pure yang soul that Lu Ping had obtained from Ying Tian sect's pure yang cultivator, Fei Tian Laozu's inheritance in the Ying Tian dojo. When Lu Ping came out of seclusion, he found that only Tian Shan Laozu was left guarding Frost Island. Tian Shan Laozu had disappeared at some point. Tian Shan Laozu had obviously discovered that Lu Ping had come out of seclusion. In Lu Ping's perception, Tian Shan Laozu's figure suddenly disappeared. Tian Shan Laozu had obviously used a spatial divine ability to come to him. Lu Ping was slightly stunned. He had just come out of seclusion and hadn't gone to greet Tian Shan Laozu. As a senior, Tian Shan Laozu had come out to greet him. There must be something urgent. Otherwise, Tian Shan Laozu wouldn't do this. The space in front of Lu Ping rippled. Tian Shan Laozu stepped out. Seeing Lu Ping, he said, "Daoshi is dead. Senior brother Tianshu has returned to Tianling Mountain." Lu Ping's expression immediately changed. "Junior brother Yin Xianchu has returned to North Sea?" Gua Tian Shan Laozu nodded and said, "When Daoshi was assassinated, there were Xianling sect cultivators around. Yin Xianchu killed 3 of them and broke out of the encirclement despite being heavily injured. Right now, he is being chased by cultivators from Xianling, Vast Ocean, Haiyan, Feiyu, and Lingu sects. At the same time, the sects from North Sea are also working together to pressure us to hand over Yin Xianchu," Lu Ping said angrily. "Junior brother Yin Xianchu broke out of the sect long ago and is no longer a disciple of our sect. How dare they do this?" Patriarch of Tianshan smiled bitterly and said, "Back then, the few of you caused such a huge commotion in the North Sea. How could the other sects believe you? They would only think that it was a ploy by our faction behind the scenes." Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and said, "Senior Uncle Tianshu, going back at this time, could it be?" Tian Shan Laozu sighed and said, "There's no other way. Our sect has no choice but to do this. After all, this time, the sects of North Sea are working together to pressure us. The 11 small sects and families are also supporting them. Our sect has no choice but to do this. Senior brother Tianshu has already started searching for Yin Xianchu in North Sea under senior sister Tianling's order." When Lu Ping heard that it was his teacher's order, he could only suppress his anger. He took a deep breath and said, "This doesn't seem like teacher's style. Is there any other reason?" Tian Shan Laozu nodded and said, "There seems to be the shadow of the Crystal Palace, but the main reason is that all the sects are afraid after the vast ocean relic and the Battle of Frost Island. The strength that our sect has displayed is far beyond the other sects' reach." Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Is there any movement from the demon race?" At this time, what he was most afraid of was that the demon race would take the opportunity to collude with Mysterious Spirit, Vast Ocean, and other sections. Tian Shan Laozu also understood what Lu Ping meant and said, "Fortunately, after Demon King Kong Jing broke through to the late Dharma stage, the deep-sea demon region is not peaceful now. Also, there is news that a large number of Mara have appeared somewhere in the deep-sea demon region. I'm afraid the demon race will not be able to care about this place for now." Only then did Lu Ping remember that Tian Shan Laozu did not rush to see him just to tell him this news. He asked, "Senior uncle, do you have any orders?" Tianshan Laozu said, "It's not my orders. Senior Sister Tianling asked you to return to Tianling Mountain as soon as possible after you come out of seclusion." Lu Ping nodded and said, "All right then, I won't stay here any longer." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a flash of light under his feet, and he was about to fly towards the teleportation device. However, he suddenly thought of something and stopped to ask, "Senior Uncle, how is the large spirit stone mine in the center of the island now?" Tianshan Laozu knew what he wanted to ask and said, "The Mara inside has been eliminated, but the mine has been damaged to a certain extent. In the next few years, there may be a certain degree of decline in the mine's production. Fortunately, the damage is not serious, and it will recover on its own after a period of time." After returning to Tianling Mountain, Lu Ping did not immediately go to see Tianling Laozu. Instead, he hurried to the crafting hall with a heavy heart. However, he found that the crafting hall was currently deserted. In the past, the bustle of the crafting hall was second only to that of the elixir pavilion. Lu Ping frowned as he entered the crafting hall. Only then did he realize that the entire crafting hall, including Tianshan Laozu and the ordinary core forging realm artificers, was not in the crafting hall. Only a few blood condensation realm disciples who were learning artificing were in the crafting hall. Lu Ping slapped his head as if he had thought of something. Then, he walked out of the crafting hall and headed towards the puppet pavilion. There was only one possibility for the crafting hall's cultivators to disappear en masse. Tianling Laozu and the others had secretly transported the treasure ship from the sea outside Frost Island to Tianling Mountain. The cultivators of the crafting hall had naturally been summoned to prepare to repair the treasure ship. This was the true symbol of Zhenling's rise. No wonder Zhenling was so secretive. Ji Xianxian had been depressed for a period of time after losing to Ouyang Weijian a few decades ago. Later, he was inspired by Lu Ping and pulled himself together. Ji Xianxian had been in a state of semi-seclusion for the next few decades. Even after Lu Ping returned from the Middle Earth, Ji Xianxian hadn't seen him again. Ji Xianxian had always been on the best terms with Yin Xianchu. At this time, Lu Ping didn't believe that Ji Xianxian was still in seclusion. Inside the puppet pavilion, spiritual master Xian Huai was walking outside. He was stunned when he saw Lu Ping walking towards him. Then, he turned around and walked past Lu Ping as if he didn't see him. Lu Ping was about to salute spiritual master Xian Huai when he saw spiritual master Xian Huai acting like this. In the blink of an eye, spiritual master Xian Huai had already walked past Lu Ping in a hurry. Lu Ping turned around to look at spiritual master Xian Huai's shadow, then turned to look at the puppet pavilion. His expression immediately darkened, and then he strode into the puppet pavilion. In the side hall of the puppet pavilion, Lu Ping pushed the door of the side hall. Rays of runes flowed on the door, dispersing all of Lu Ping's strength. Lu Ping frowned and immediately doubled the strength in his hand. However, the door still didn't budge. "It's useless. This is a restriction formation personally set up by Martial Uncle Tianfeng." Ji Xuanchuan's voice faintly came from inside the side hall. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "You can see me? Looks like you've already heard about junior brother Yin's matter." Ji Xianxian sighed and said, "I heard that he killed that scum, Dao Shi. I knew that he was going to be in trouble. I originally wanted to help him, but who would have thought that the sect seemed to have already predicted this?" Martial Uncle Tianfeng immediately appeared in front of me and put me under house arrest in this side hall. Ji Xianxian then said, "I heard that you were in the limelight again on Frost Island and then went into seclusion to cultivate. Why are you here now?" Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "I just came out of seclusion and wanted to find you to understand the situation. You should know that you were already under house arrest, so I couldn't be bothered to come over. I don't think you know much about the situation here." Ji Xianxian said anxiously, You have to think of a way to let me out. Otherwise, Yin Xianchu will really be in trouble." Lu Ping said, "You also know who he killed, Xiang Laozu. Why isn't Dao Sheng jumping around anxiously? At this time, who knows how many people in the North Sea are looking for him? You and I are both his good friends, and who knows how many people are watching us in the open and in the dark. If we really let you out to look for him, that would be harming him. You have to understand that Marshal Uncle Tianfeng didn't put you under house arrest to keep you out of this matter, but to protect you, and also to protect him. Ji Xianxian was silent for a moment, then said, "You're right, but I still have to go out. I also know that you will go find him." Lu Ping opened his mouth, but heard Ji Xianxian say again, "Don't worry, I won't go find him. It's just that what's with putting me under house arrest in this side hall?" Lu Ping recalled that Taoist Master Xuanhuai had deliberately pretended not to see him, so he sighed and said, "I'll try, but I've never been to the puppet pavilion today." Ji Xianxian laughed in a low voice. "Do you think I don't know your methods?" A golden light flashed in Lu Ping's palm, and the restriction runes on the door lit up once more. However, after being touched by the golden light in Lu Ping's palm, it began to slowly melt. A moment later, the power of the restriction on the door was greatly reduced due to the destruction of a part of it. Lu Ping took the opportunity to form a few hand seals on the door, and the flickering light of the other runes instantly dimmed and disappeared from the door. Lu Ping pushed the door open and said, "Come out." Ji Xianxian, who was covered in sloppiness, walked out of the side hall and stretched his waist. Lu Ping frowned and said, "How did it end up like this?" Ji Xianxian didn't care at all. He turned around and laughed in a low voice. "Where's that withered willow tree of yours?" Lu Ping was startled and said happily, "What, are you confident now?" Seeing Ji Xianxian nod his head proudly, Lu Ping finally noticed that Ji Xuanchuan's cultivation had already risen to the 8th level of the core forging realm. However, it seemed that he had just broken through, and the aura around his body hadn't completely stabilized yet. This was probably because he was under house arrest. "Oh right." Ji Xianxian seemed to have thought of something and asked, "I remember that you once cultivated the soul-splitting secret technique. Do you still have that piece of soul-nurturing wood?" Seeing Lu Ping nod his head, Ji Xianxian smiled and said, "Fortunately, with this spiritual item that has been nurtured and refined by your divine sense, the creation of this avatar can be saved a lot of trouble." Chapter 938. Only Xinling sect was truly angered by Dao Shi's death. However, Dao Shi Laozu's death was an opportunity to restrain Xinling. The Battle of Frost Island once again allowed the sects to see Xinling's schemes and unparalleled strength. The sects of the North Sea knew that if this continued, Xinling might really be unstoppable in the North Sea. In a group, when there was an outstanding person, many people might be willing to follow him. However, when this person's ability surpassed the limits of most people, this person would be isolated and even viewed with hostility. Xinling sect was currently facing such a situation. No matter how strong Xinling sect was as a medium-sized sect, there was a limit to how strong it could be. After all, there were forces in the North Sea that could balance it. However, when Xinling sect's power gradually began to show signs of surpassing that of a medium-sized sect, it would be faced with the panic of the various sects in the North Sea, and they would have to join forces to contain it. Even the attitudes of Shuiyin Pavilion, Yujin sect, and Chongming sect, which were in alliance with Xinling sect, had become a little unclear due to Dao Shi's death. Spiritual Master Xian Huai felt that Lu Ping's ability to easily break through the restrictions set by Tiancheng Laozu was both unexpected and reasonable. However, although he was unwilling to put his disciple under house arrest, he was even more unwilling to see his disciple lose his life because of brotherhood. Hence, after Lu Ping released Ji Xianxian, Xinling sect's puppet master, Daoist Xian Huai, who had lost all hope of advancing to the Avatar realm, began to help his disciple create an avatar for Lu Ping. At the same time, he was also monitoring his disciple closely, lest he took the opportunity to escape from Tianling Mountain to look for In Xianchu. Lu Ping originally wanted to go to his two good friends to understand the situation, but he didn't expect to find almost nothing in the end. Helpless, he could only go to the hall of Chonghua to see his teacher. After Dao Shi Laozu's death, the various forces of the North Sea gradually united to punish Xinling. The various sects' envoys entered and left Heaven's Spirit Mountain several times, some with high status, but Xinling was always received by the sect master Lu Tianling, Laozu. Although many envoys, and even some first-generation cultivators, wanted to meet the few mid-Dharma Laozu and even Tiancheng Laozu, they were all rejected by Lao Tzu. It was as if Jinling's first-generation cultivators had all disappeared, and everything in Jinling, big or small, had been handed over to Jinling's second-generation cultivators. However, Lu Ping knew that it wasn't because Jinling's first-generation cultivators had given up their power, but because the sect's first-generation cultivators, Lao Tzu, were all focused on repairing the wreckage of Fei Ling's sect's treasured ship. Almost all the craftsmen in the crafting hall had been transferred, so how could they care about other things? Lu Tianling, Lao Tzu, saw Lu Ping come in and smiled. You found out most of the information, right? Tell me, what do you plan to do? Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Does the sect already know the whereabouts of Junior Yin? Lu Tianling, Lao Tzu, looked at Lu Ping in surprise and said, Junior Li Xianyin only has one successor, so his inheritance shouldn't be broken. But now, this kid has surpassed his predecessor, and his abilities are even better than Junior Li Xuanyin's. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill Dao Shi and break out of the encirclement in front of so many Xianling sect cultivators. It won't be easy to find him. Lu Ping was relieved. Obviously, none of the sects in the North Sea had any news of Yin Xianchu. The reason why the sects were pressuring Jinling was probably because they thought that Jinling was secretly protecting Yin Xianchu. Lu Ping thought for a while, then said, I heard that Master has already sent Uncle Master Tian Shu out to search for Junior Yin. Lu Tianling, Lao Tzu, looked at Lu Ping and said, I understand what you're thinking, but this time, our sect has no choice but to do this, because the Crystal Palace has officially begun to intervene in the North Sea's affairs. Lu Ping was shocked. Although the Crystal Palace had the intention to intervene in the North Sea's affairs, they were suppressed by the sects in the North Sea. In the end, they had no choice but to stand behind Xianling sect and be the driving force behind the scenes. Now that the Crystal Palace had officially stepped onto the stage, why didn't the sects in the North Sea object this time? Lu Tianling, Lao Tzu, seemed to know what Lu Ping was thinking and continued, that Yin Xianchu destroyed a lair of the overflowing ocean gang in the East Sea and found a teleportation formation that leads to the North Sea. That's why he snuck into the North Sea. The overflowing ocean gang was an external force of the Crystal Palace. This was almost an open secret in the North Sea. One of the overflowing ocean gang's lair had been destroyed, and dozens of their disciples had died in Yin Xuanchu's hands. The Crystal Palace naturally used this to pressure Jinling. The sects in the North Sea were worried that Jinling would not be able to keep them in check, so they turned a blind eye to the Crystal Palace's public intervention. Lu Tianling, Lao Tzu, continued, originally, the sects in the North Sea had been weakened by a lot during the Battle of Frost Island, and the share of the Spirit Stone mine should have changed as well. However, with the current situation, in order not to provoke the sects in the North Sea, we had no choice but to postpone this matter for now. Lu Ping did not know why his teacher would tell him so much, so he asked carefully, then what will our sect do next? Lu Tianling, Lao Tzu, glanced at him and said, what else can we do? Rest and build up our strength and prepare to go. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, is it because of the treasured ship? Lu Tianling, Lao Tzu, said, the restoration of the treasured ship is the most important thing, but don't forget, if our sect wants to become a large sect, not only do we need the treasured ship and 2 Dharma adepts, there is another important condition, and that is to have 3 Dharma adepts. Lu Ping was stunned for a moment and said, this disciple understands. The so-called 3 Dharma adepts referred to the first, second, and third generation of Dharma adepts in a large sect. This meant that the inheritance of this large sect would not be broken in a short period of time, and it would not just be a flash in the pan. This was also one of the basic conditions for a large sect to be recognized by the cultivation world. In order for Jinling to become a large sect, after finding the wreckage of the treasured ship of Fei Ling sect, there were only 2 conditions that had yet to be met. One was to have a second Dharma adept, and this was something that no one in the first generation of Jinling could achieve. Tian Shui and Tian Fan, the 2 Lao Tzu's path of cultivation, had almost reached the end. Tian Kong, Lao Tzu, did not have much time left to live, and as for Tian Lu and Tian Jiang, the 2 Lao Tzu's, it was needless to say. The second Dharma adept's hope had already been placed on Tian Lin, Lao Tzu. The second condition was to have a Dharma adept appear in the third generation of disciples. Currently, among the third generation of disciples in Jinling, only Lu Ping was outstanding. Naturally, Lu Ping would not pass on this responsibility. Lu Tianling Laozu drank a mouthful of honey tea. Lu Ping's eyelids twitched involuntarily. Ever since Lu Ping obtained a nest of amethyst bees, the 10 or so Laozus in Jinling all started drinking amethyst honey tea. Naturally, the amethyst honey was exploited by Lu Ping. Lu Tianling Laozu continued, "Your uncle Tiancheng has already entered Huangli Island. For the time being, don't go out and focus on your cultivation. Don't bother about Yin Xuanchu's matter." Lu Ping was a little confused. Could it be that teacher was going to put him under house arrest like Ji Xinxian? But wasn't this a little too much? Lu Ping asked carefully, "How's Uncle Tiancheng's injury? Is it to guard against the demon race?" Lu Tianling Laozu said unhappily, "It's to guard against you. If you go out of the sect alone, I'm afraid there will be a few Laozus from various sects coming to kill you. You've made a name for yourself on Frost Island. Even blood azura fell in your hands. Compared to you, what is Yin Xianchu?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and his expression immediately became a little ugly. It seemed that the current situation in Junling was worse than he had expected. It was obvious that the various sects were willing to shed all pretense of cordiality with his own sect for some matters. Lu Tianling Laozu saw everything clearly from the side, so he said, "You don't have to worry too much. The various sects in the North Sea don't dare to make a move against our sect at the moment. But if there's a chance to surround and kill you, it's very likely that the various sects will do it at all costs." Lu Tianling Laozu paused, then continued, "Your uncle Tiancheng's origin is damaged, and he lost the chance to advance to the middle Dharma stage. But his strength is not affected, and his injury is not too serious. The reason why he is stationed at Huangli Island is not only to give you time to cultivate in seclusion, but also because your little girlfriend has been recruited. The repair of the treasured ship is extremely important. Not only do we need a large number of artificers to work together, we also need formation masters to repair the formations on the treasured ship. Nephew who is currently a formation master, so the repair of the treasured ship can't be done without her." After exiting the palace of Chonghua, Lu Ping had basically figured out the situation, so he naturally had a plan in his mind. Lu Ping thought for a moment, then called out Wang Qi, who was cultivating in seclusion, from the House of Gold. He said, "You go to Huangli Island first. Your uncle who has left Huangli Island for some matters, and I'm afraid she won't be able to return in a short period of time. I still have other matters to attend to, so I'll leave everything on the island to you for the time being. If there's any trouble, just go find your uncle Tiancheng." Wang Qi nodded and was about to leave, but he was stopped by Lu Ping, who handed him a jade slip and a faintly discernible flying sword. He said, "This flying sword is an invisible sword that I obtained from the Fei Ling sect. There are 4 treasures condensed on it, and that jade slip contains the invisible sword art that I obtained from the Fei Ling sect. I'll pass it on to you now, so when you go down, practice diligently and don't be negligent." Finished speaking, Lu Ping handed a storage pouch to Wang Qi and said, "The Fang siblings and Tsang Wu are in seclusion on Huangli Island. If they advance to the core forging stage, you can take them as registered disciples on behalf of Master and distribute the items in this storage pouch to the 3 of them." After sending Wang Qi away, Lu Ping walked towards the back of Tianling Mountain. After passing by Fornak's Cavern Ancestors' cave dwelling, Lu Ping descended from a cliff and walked towards a pile of rubble at the bottom of the cliff until he disappeared into the rubble. Chapter 939. Behind the pile of rocks was a huge world within a cave. It was about 1,000 feet tall and about 1,000 feet wide, and it was nearly 10,000 feet deep into the cave. Half of the cave was submerged in seawater. The huge pile of rocks at the periphery might just be an incredibly brilliant illusory rune, but if it was not a cultivator with an incredibly high status in Jinling, they would be helpless before that huge pile of rocks. As soon as Lu Ping entered the cave, Long Su's voice sounded in his ears, "Show me your jade token." Lu Ping looked up and saw Reverend Xian Shang looking at him with a cold expression. Lu Ping had no choice but to hand over the jade plate at his waist. The jade plate had a seal to identify the cultivators in Jinling's secret technique, and it was related to the life of all the cultivators on the jade plate. Forget about the fact that it was difficult for others to impersonate it. No one other than Lu Ping could impersonate it. Reverend Xian Shang took the jade plate, and a true origin halo flashed in his palm. Reverend Xian Shang returned the jade plate to Lu Ping and said, "Junior brother Xian Ping, this is my duty. Please do not blame me." Lu Ping nodded at Reverend Xian Shang and said, "I also have to congratulate you for improving by leaps and bounds, senior brother." Lu Ping used his divine thought to sense the surging aura around Reverend Xian Shang. It was clear that he had just reached the 8th layer of core forging, and his aura had yet to calm down. Reverend Xian Shang's face twitched, but in the end, he did not smile. "I can't compare to you, junior brother Xian Ping." Lu Ping knew that Reverend Xian Shang usually did not smile, which was why he did not say much. He smiled faintly at Reverend Xian Shang, then walked into the depths of the cave along the two sides of the waterway. The huge cave might be at the bottom of the cliff, but light was not affected. When Lu Ping walked hundreds of feet forward, he could already see a huge ship docked in the waterway ahead of him. Based on its appearance, what else could it be but the sea chariot of Fei Ling's sect, which had once sunk at the bottom of the sea? However, the treasured ship had been roughly cleaned. The sand and rust on the surface of the treasured ship had been removed. The treasured ship had been restored to its original appearance, which made Lu Ping look even more like the accumulation of time. Hundreds of Jinling cultivators were busy on and off the ship. Some of them were cultivators from the Artifact Refinement Hall, and they were the busiest among the hundreds of cultivators. Some of them were busy cleaning the rust on the outer shell of the ship, some were checking if every piece of the ship was still usable, and some were replacing some rusted things on the ship. The most skilled artificers in the Artifact Refining Hall were divided into two groups. One group had opened up a huge artifact refining room on the stone wall of the cave, and was busy refining something with flames. Waves of heat caused the originally humid cave to seem hot and dry. The other group of cultivators gathered together to discuss something. They often quarreled due to differences of opinion. Lu Ping even saw a third-generation disciple waving his fist and arguing with a second-generation cultivator about something. Their voices grew louder and louder, and in the end, it was the second-generation cultivator who lost. Before the third-generation disciples could feel proud of themselves, they were attracted by the next topic and joined in the discussion. Lu Ping could clearly sense that all the cultivators in the Artifact Refining Hall had fallen into a state of extreme excitement. For the artificers in the overseas cultivation world, the true pinnacle wasn't refining one or two tribulation lightning spirit treasures, but being fortunate enough to participate in the construction of a treasured ship. If they could preside over the construction of an important component of a treasured ship, their name could even go down in the cultivation world for thousands of years. The reason why Jiao Yuqiang of the Fei Ling sect was known as the rare artifact refining genius of the North Sea cultivation world in 1,000 years was because he personally made the Golden House in Qianzhong Su, which could be used as the main cabin of a treasured ship using a large spatial artifact instead of an abode treasure. Before that, the main cabins of treasured ships in the overseas cultivation world were all inlaid with abode treasures. Not only was it extremely difficult to make, but it was also extremely easy to damage, especially when the treasured ship was passing through the stormy ocean. The space there was extremely unstable, and it had a strong destructive effect on a large space like an abode treasure. Usually, every time the treasured ships of the overseas large sects came to the Middle Earth, the abode treasure in the main cabin would undergo a major repair, consuming a large amount of rare spiritual materials. This was because the journey was smooth. If there was a slight carelessness when passing through the stormy ocean, it would not be strange for an abode treasure to be destroyed. Although such a loss was considered serious for the cultivation world of the East Sea or the South Sea, for the barren cultivation world of the North Sea, the destruction of an abode treasure could only be described as disastrous. In view of this, Jiao Yuqiang presided over the refining of a large spatial artifact to replace the abode treasure. How could a spiritual artifact be used to replace an abode treasure? This was simply a joke. From the moment Jiao Yuqiang had this idea, He had been reminded and ridiculed by countless people, whether kind or malicious, but Zhao Yuqiang was unmoved. In the end, he still turned his idea into reality. When Zhao Yuqiang, with the support of his teacher, Zhongshuan Laozu, successfully inlaid the successfully refined spatial artifact into the treasured ship, and it could support the existence of a large spiritual vein. Not only was the entire Fei Ling sect in disbelief, but when the news spread, it almost shook the entire overseas cultivation world. The frequent damage or even destruction of the main cabin of the treasured ship was almost an unspeakable problem for the large sects in the overseas cultivation world. The forging grandmasters of the overseas sects had put in a lot of effort, but they still could not solve this problem. In the long run, even if the East Sea and the South Sea were richer than the North Sea, it was not to the point that they could ignore the frequent loss of the abode treasure. But now, Fei Ling sect was actually able to use a large spatial magic tool to replace a heavenly abode magic treasure as the main cabin of the treasured ship. It was obvious that it was much easier to refine a spatial magic tool than a heavenly abode magic treasure, and the amount of spiritual materials needed to refine a heavenly abode magic treasure could not be mentioned in the same breath. This was undoubtedly a great news for the overseas large sects who had suffered from the destruction of the abode treasure. However, Zhao Yuqiang had done it, but it did not mean that other forging grandmasters and forging grandmasters could do it. The overseas large sects had invested a lot of manpower and material resources, but they still could not replace the abode treasure with a spatial artifact and inlay it on the treasured ship. Therefore, the ambassadors of the overseas large sects had all gone to Fei Ling sect, wanting to get the method of embedding the spatial artifact on the treasured ship from Fei Ling sect. Fei Ling sect naturally would not leak this secret. Many large sects had offered generous cultivation resources in exchange for this method, but they were all rejected by Fei Ling sect without any hesitation. The Crystal Palace even threatened to use a second tribulation spiritual treasure in exchange for the method, but it was still to no avail. Later, Fei Ling sect even threatened them with words, but Fei Ling sect still withstood the pressure and insisted not to leak the method. However, Fei Ling sect naturally would not be so stupid to offend all the overseas large sections. Soon, they proposed a new method, that was, Fei Ling sect would refine and inlay the spatial artifact on the treasured ship of the overseas large sects to replace the abode treasure. However, the overseas large sects would have to pay a certain amount of cultivation resources as a price. Now, the overseas large sects finally understood that Fei Ling sect had originally planned to use a small amount of resources for a long time. Previously, although the price paid by the various sects in exchange for the method of Fei Ling sect was much higher than that of embedding the main cabin of the spatial artifact by Fei Ling sect, the spatial artifact was often damaged like the abode treasure. It was even not as good as the abode treasure in the stormy ocean. However, the refining of the spatial artifact was too cheap. It was so cheap that even if it was a one-time thing, it would need to be replaced after entering and exiting the stormy ocean. Therefore, the various sects would rather use the spatial artifact than the abode treasure. Although Fei Ling sect did not ask for an exorbitant price, in the long run, this method was undoubtedly the most cost-effective for Fei Ling sect. Fei Ling sect could continuously earn cultivation resources from the overseas large sects, and the various large sects had no choice but to submit to Fei Ling sect when it came to the treasured ship. Zhao Yuqiang, who was originally just an ordinary refiner, became famous throughout the world because of this. He gained the favor of the entire Fei Ling sect, and from then on, he soared to the sky. Lu Ping could not see any trace of Chen Lian below the treasured ship. He knew that Chen Lian was now a refiner grandmaster. At this moment, he must be together with Tianjiang Laozu and the other first-generation Laozu of the sect. Thus, he flew up to the treasured ship and walked towards the original location of the main cabin. Just as Lu Ping expected, Chen Lian and Tianjiang Laozu were currently together with Tian Xiang, Tian Shui, Tian Fan, and Tian Kong. Besides them, Daoist Xinshin and Hu Lili were also present. The few of them were frowning, as if they had encountered an extremely difficult matter. Seeing Lu Ping coming over, the few of them ignored him. Just when Lu Ping was about to go talk to Chen Lian, he heard Tian Xiang Laozu suddenly say, "If it doesn't work, Then we will first embed the flying cloud's heavenly abode here to replace the main cabin. We can't find the method to embed the spatial artifact, but the method to embed the heavenly abode has been obtained by Taishan Laozu from someone else. Seeing that Tianjiang Laozu seemed to have something to say, Tianxiang Laozu raised his hand to stop him and said, "Junior brother Tianjiang, old man understands? Right now, we should first repair the treasured ship. As for the loss of the heavenly abode, we can talk about it after our sect becomes a large sect." The flying cloud's heavenly abode was one of Zhenling's heavenly abode treasures. It was also a place of inheritance for Zhenling. The cloud sail in Lu Ping's hand was obtained in this heavenly abode. Although the quality of this treasure wasn't high, and the heavenly abode was mostly filled with undulating mountain ranges, the heavenly abode treasures embedded in the main cabin of the treasured ship were all of the same grade. Due to the damage caused by the stormy ocean, when embedding a heavenly abode as the main cabin, all the sects would try to use a lower-grade heavenly abode to minimize the damage. Tianjiang Laozu said, "All right, even if we use the flying cloud's heavenly abode as the main cabin, what should we do about the guardian artifact spirit of the treasured ship? Do we have to destroy a second tribulation spirit treasure and nurture the artifact spirit inside into a new guardian artifact spirit?" Tian Kong Laozu was shocked to the side. Zhenling only had 2 second tribulation spirit treasures. One was left behind by Taishan Laozu to stabilize the fate of the sect, and it had always been kept by Tianxiang Laozu. Naturally, this treasure would not be destroyed. If they really wanted to nurture a guardian artifact spirit, they would have to destroy the splitting mountain axe. Don't even think about it. The splitting mountain axe and the old man's training method are very compatible. With the splitting mountain axe in hand, the old man can even fight against the Jade Shura. Even if the old man doesn't have long to live, that kid from Tianshan is training the same method as the old man. Furthermore, Tianshan might enter the mid-Dharma stage in the future. The old man has to leave the splitting mountain axe for him to use. Furthermore, the spirit of the splitting mountain axe has already agreed to recognize Tianshan as its master in the future. Tian Fan Laozu couldn't help but say, "Brother Tian Kong, calm down. Brother Tianjiang is just saying. Do you think anyone here would be willing to destroy the splitting mountain axe?" Lu Ping listened for a while and understood the situation. He raised his hand and said, "Everyone, Laozu, the guardian artifact spirit is with me." Chapter 940. What would it feel like for a core forging adept to be glared at by 4 adepts at the mid-Dharma stage and above, with all of their auras pressing down on him like a flood? At least, Lu Ping didn't feel anything. After the oncoming aura pressed down on Lu Ping, the strange dragon in the core space only raised its head slightly, and the aura that was enough to scare a normal core forging adept to the point of incontinence disappeared. Looking at the smiling Lu Ping, the few Laozu suppressed their shock. Tianxiang Laozu was the first to ask, "When did this happen? Why didn't you say so earlier?" Tianjiang Laozu, however, said, "That shouldn't be the case. With the current state of the ship, there's no way the artifact spirit could maintain its spirituality for 4,000 years. It should have disappeared a long time ago." Lu Ping glanced at Tianjiang Laozu. With this master craftsman present, it was not easy for Lu Ping to make up a good lie. "When I was still in the blood condensation stage, I participated in a trip to Fei Ling Island under the recommendation of Uncle Master Tianlin. I obtained 8 spirit forging pills and a spatial instrument, Qianzhong millet. The artifact spirit, Ruyu, was in the Qianzhong millet. This time, I was able to discover the wreckage of the ship because of Ruyu's reminder." Qianzhong millet? Could this be the spatial instrument that was embedded in the ship? Lu Ping shook his head and said, "It's only a part of it. The real spatial instrument on the ship should be the House of Gold, and the Qianzhong millet is only the key to the formation of the fake terrain in the House of Gold. It's also the key to the House of Gold being able to lead the large spirit vein into it." Tianjiang Laozu was indeed a master craftsman. Hearing this, he immediately thought of something and said, 2 combined spatial instruments. Could it be that the secret of the main cabin of the spatial instrument that Jiao Yuqiang made is hidden in these 2 spatial instruments? Lu Ping shook his head and said, I found the House of Gold in Lao Tzu's abode in Zhongshuan, East Sea. At that time, the two spatial artifacts merged naturally. I don't know how it happened, but I don't know how it happened. Tianjiang Laozu still wanted to ask something, only to hear Tianjiang Elephant Laozu suddenly asking, that weapon spirit Ruyu has already recognized you as its master and was refined by you? Lu Ping embarrassedly hesitated for a moment before replying, yes. Tian Fan, Tian Kong, and the rest of the Laozus looked at each other helplessly. Tian Xiang Laozu then sighed and said, you need to increase your level of practice as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the ship sets sail in the future, without a mid-Dharma level of practice, you will be under a lot of pressure. Because of the uniqueness of the artifact spirit guarding the treasured ship, the person who was acknowledged by the artifact spirit was usually the true controller of the treasured ship. Only then could they unleash all of the treasured ship's power. Hence, when the treasured ships of the overseas cultivators set sail, it was usually the Dharma adepts who would control the treasured ship's artifact spirit. However, in history, there were cases where the treasured ship's artifact spirit automatically recognized a master. In that case, although the treasured ship could still set sail without the control of a Dharma adept, the power of the treasured ship could not be unleashed in an extremely smooth manner. If not for Lu Ping's status in Jinling, Tian Xiang Laozu would probably not hesitate to forcefully seize the artifact spirit in Lu Ping's hands to control the artifact spirit. It was also because of Lu Ping's current level of practice that Tian Xiang Laozu was extremely confident in Lu Ping's future achievements. That was why he silently accepted the fact that Lu Ping had refined the treasured ship's artifact spirit. Tian Shui Laozu, who was standing at the side, had long become impatient. She said, all right, after talking for so long, no one is blaming you for refining the artifact spirit. Take out that artifact spirit called Ruyu and your golden house, and let us have a look. Lu Ping scratched the back of his head and said, I still have to report to the few Laozu. That golden house and Qianzhong millet have already been used by this disciple as a spiritual herb garden. There are some treasures that this disciple has meticulously collected over the years. However, Ruyu seems to have some memory of the method to forge this spatial artifact and embed it into the main cabin of the treasured ship. Can the few Laozu see if you can forge another spatial artifact and embed it into the main cabin? Tian Shui Laozu immediately frowned as she scolded. You bastard! Aren't you just making your own plans? The artifact spirit has already been refined by you. In the future, this treasured ship will be under your control. Who would dare to take advantage of you? Lu Ping's face turned red from Tian Shui Laozu's scolding. He hastily summoned Ruyu out before pulling Chan Lian away. Behind him, the few Laozu and Daoist Xian Chun were already chattering nonstop as they questioned Ruyu. Since Ruyu had already been refined by Lu Ping, she was very clear about what she should and shouldn't say. Thus, Lu Ping was relieved. Chun Lian hurriedly shook off Lu Ping's arm and said, What are you doing? What are you doing? I still have many things to ask that artifact spirit of yours. Lu Ping said, Ruyu will temporarily stay here. You can ask her whenever you want. Right now, I have something more important to ask you. Only then did Chun Lian calm down and said, What is it? Tell me. Lu Ping threw the jade letter that recorded the refining method of shapeless sword to Chan Lian and said, Take a look at this. Chun Lian received the jade letter suspiciously and scanned it with his divine sense. Instantly, delight appeared on his face as he said, The complete refining method of shapeless sword. The complete 9 forbidden treasures? Lu Ping smiled complacently and said, If it's not something urgent, I will look for you. How is it? It can be considered a pleasant surprise, right? This shapeless sword secret art and its refining method are very famous in Fei Ling sect. Although it's only a great divine sword art, this sword art coupled with the shapeless flying sword is something that can't be exchanged for even a supreme divine ability. With this secret art to refine shapeless sword, who in the entire Jinling would dare to show disrespect to a master refiner like you? After Chun Lian became a tool refining grandmaster, there was once a second-generation disciple who ordered Chun Lian to refine spirit-nurturing treasures for them as if he was on a mission. A dignified tool refining grandmaster was ordered around, and in the end, It was the Sky River Patriarch who came out to reprimand him. In the end, it was still a matter of strength. Although Chen Lian had advanced to the late core forging realm, his strength could only be regarded as outstanding among cultivators of the same level. Although he could condense spirit-nurturing treasures and refine spirit-nurturing treasures, he didn't have a trump card. If it was Lu Ping, how many people in the entire Zhenling would dare to show off in front of him? Chun Lian was surprised and said, "You want to make the shapeless sword's secret art public to the cultivators of the sect?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Half of it. After all, this shapeless sword's secret art is a unique skill. Du Feng, Zhongjian, and Ma, you are all sword cultivators, and we also have a few disciples who practice swordsmanship. This shapeless sword's secret art should be very attractive to them. When the time comes, we can leave the specific measures to the Laozu and the sect to deal with. In any case, this shapeless sword's secret art can't be popularized." With that, Lu Ping handed the Aquaslite sword to Chen Lian and said, "The Aquaslite sword's grade has been improved by you. Now, it only lacks one spirit-nurturing treasure restriction to become a spirit-nurturing grade magic treasure. Try to improve it as much as possible, and see if you can condense the remaining 3 spirit-nurturing treasures." Whenever Lu Ping handed over a magic treasure to Chen Lian to improve, it was usually when he was about to go into seclusion or when he didn't have a big task to complete. Lu Ping was surprised and asked, "You're going into seclusion again?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "Yes, just keep this a secret." Chun Lian was even more shocked when he saw how serious Lu Ping was. Since Lu Ping wanted him to keep it a secret, this time seclusion was naturally extremely important. Thinking about Lu Ping's current cultivation, what could be more important than seclusion to condense the Dharma idol? Chun Lian's lips moved. He originally wanted to ask more, but in the end, he swallowed his words. Lu Ping reached out and pulled the House of Gold off his neck and handed it to Chen Lian. He said, "I'll give the House of Gold to you. Although Ruyu knows many secrets about the main cabin of the treasure ship, she doesn't have the real thing, so it will take a lot of effort to refine it. Take this House of Gold and study it yourself. Try to comprehend the secret of how Jiao Yuqiang embedded the spatial magic treasure into the treasure ship. That way, my House of Gold won't be forcefully embedded into the treasure ship. I don't want the treasures I've collected all these years to be exposed in broad daylight." Chun Lian couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you afraid that I'll find out what you've hidden inside?" Lu Ping chuckled and said, "I've set up some restrictions in some important places. Unless you're a Dharma adept, with your current cultivation, you won't be able to open these restrictions. However, these restrictions won't hinder you from studying the House of Gold and Qianzhong Millet." Chun Lian smiled and said, "I knew that you've prepared everything. Don't worry, I won't reveal the House of Gold to anyone." Lu Ping smiled and nodded. He chatted with Chen Lian for a while and especially instructed him to impart the shapeless sword technique to Yin Xianchu when there was a chance. Then, he hurriedly bid farewell and left the cave. Chun Lian put the House of Gold in his sleeve and walked back. He saw Grandmaster Tianjiang Laozu walking over quickly. Seeing that Chun Lian was alone, he quickly asked, "Where's that kid? Where did he go?" Chun Lian shook his head and said, "He left, but he didn't say where he was going." Tianjiang Laozu cursed in a low voice. "That brat ran away really fast." Then, he asked Chun Lian, "Did he say anything?" Chun Lian answered honestly, "He obtained the complete treasure to forge the shapeless sword and handed it over to me. There's nothing else." Tianjiang Laozu walked back, and Chun Lian hurriedly followed. Tianjiang Laozu said that artifact spirit was very detailed, but he didn't have a real object to refer to. When will he be able to forge a suitable spatial artifact? Whatever, if he can't do it by then, that kid will take out the House of Gold and embed it. In the depths of the sea, Lu Ping's water escape technique was getting more and more exquisite as he moved towards the southwest. When he reached the boundary of the earth, Lu Ping placed the water moon avoidance pearl on his head and dived down to a depth of 90,000 feet. Then, he reopened the small cave that he had opened on the stone wall at the bottom of the cliff. Chapter 941. Failing Island was still filled with dense spirit energy. However, during the time Lu Ping was away, the 7 large spirit veins at the top of Failing Island had become a bit scattered due to the absence of Linglong's care. After Lu Ping summoned Linglong again, the spirit energy on the entire Failing Island immediately became regulated again. Lu Ping opened the 2 spirit pet pouches and released Debao and Lu Xiaohai. He said, "You two find a place to cultivate yourselves." Debao followed Du Jialua to hunt Mara, who had sneaked into the spirit stone vein on Frost Island. He also stole the top-grade spirit stones contained in the vein. Although the Moro Luos in the spirit stone mine were all wiped out in just half a year, Debao still managed to steal 20 top-grade spirit stones from the spirit stone mine. As for the high-grade spirit stones, Debao only handed over 500 top-grade spirit stones to Lu Ping. Lu Ping didn't care how many top-grade spirit stones he had hidden away. The reason why Lu Ping brought these two was because their cultivation was too low. Currently, they were only at the early stage of core forging. The spirit energy on Fei Ling Mountain was dense, but only Lu Ping and his 2 spirit pets were enjoying the 7 large spirit veins. Lu Ping didn't believe that the strength of these 2 people wouldn't improve while he was in seclusion. After sending the 2 away, he opened the spirit beast pouch that contained the purple crystal bees. The 3,000-year-old spirit herb garden that he found last time was still open, so the bees didn't have to stay idle. On the peak, Lu Ping once again condensed the 7 large spirit veins. The huge Linglong wine cauldron floated above his head, and the thick spirit energy pillar soared into the sky. However, after Lu Ping walked into the spirit energy pillar and began to cultivate, as Lu Ping breathed, the huge spirit energy pillar suddenly shrank and expanded, and gradually began to have a rhythm. Originally, the spirit energy pillar would gradually dissipate after rushing into the sky of Fei Ling Mountain. However, this time, when the spirit energy pillar rushed into the sky, every time Lu Ping inhaled, not only did the entire spirit energy pillar shrink, but most of the scattered spirit energy that rushed into the sky also began to flow back into the spirit energy pillar from all directions. From afar, the dense milky white spirit energy on the peak of Fei Ling Mountain formed a huge mushroom-shaped spirit energy cloud with Lu Ping's cultivation. At this time, Lu Ping had already fallen into a deep state of cultivation. All of his divine thoughts and mind began to shrink into the core space, or more precisely, into the gold core. The strange dragon in the gold core shook its head and tail, as if it couldn't wait. Lu Ping's divine thoughts seemed to have a feeling of constantly changing. It was as if Lu Ping had incarnated into the strange dragon itself, and could clearly feel the strange dragon's eagerness to break out of the gold core. In the next moment, he returned to himself, watching the scene of the strange dragon in the gold core bumping around everywhere but hitting walls everywhere. In a trance, Lu Ping seemed to have an illusion that his divine thoughts were originally the strange dragon, and the strange dragon was himself. Lu Ping knew that this was the time for him to advance to the Dharma phase. The surging qi in his blood was like a tsunami, sweeping, refining, and transporting the extremely rich spirit energy around him. Lu Ping's heart was like a big drum. Dong, dong, dong. The huge echo could be heard clearly on the entire Fei Ling Mountain. Debao and Lu Xiaohai did not dare to cultivate at this time. The 2 could no longer maintain their transformed bodies, and they both knelt down toward the top of Fei Ling Mountain. Lu Ping did not have the slightest aura of coercion on the top of Fei Ling Mountain, but this mysterious power from his blood forced the 2 to bow down unwillingly. When the purple crystal bees flying all over the sky heard Lu Ping's heartbeat, they began to fall from mid-air, like a purple crystal rain. Every purple crystal bee that fell to the ground did not dare to flap its wings and fly again. Instead, it motionlessly faced the top of Fei Ling Mountain with its 2 antennae. In the core space, with the continuous expansion of the Danxia purple gas, all the magic treasures revolving around the golden core, except for the life-bonded primal time formation, were pushed far away. Even the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash was silent, and the cloud sail was also silent. The cloud sail, which had been flying around in the core space in the form of a majestic rock, was now obediently turned into a green sail, slowly fluttering along the periphery of the Danxia purple gas. On the sail, the tool's spirit rock slightly spread its wings, its head slightly tilted down, as if it was worshipping the golden core. The Linglong wine cauldron floating above Lu Ping's head had also landed behind Lu Ping. Linglong carefully lay on the edge of the cauldron, revealing a pair of big, watery eyes, with an inexplicable divine light and a trace of hidden awe, staring at Lu Ping's back. The strange flood dragon in the core space was becoming increasingly active. The last layer of the Golden Dan's membrane had been completely broken by it. Only 9 mysterious runes were left on the surface of the Golden Dan, moving in all directions, firmly trapping the strange flood dragon within. The strange dragon was still unable to break through the barrier, and finally became angry. At this time, Lu Ping's heart suddenly moved, and the divine sense that he had gathered condensed into a ball, suddenly rushing towards the golden core in the center of the core space. The strange dragon seemed to sense something, and suddenly came back to its senses. It opened its mouth towards Lu Ping's divine sense and inhaled. Lu Ping suddenly felt as if the world was spinning, and when his divine sense calmed down, Lu Ping finally felt his vision clear. But in front of Lu Ping was a cage formed by 9 runes. Lu Ping suddenly looked back, and saw that his body had turned into a snake's body, a fish's tail, and a crocodile's claws. Although he couldn't see his head, he knew that his divine sense was completely attached to the strange dragon in the golden core. Although he had felt this many times before, that feeling was more like an illusion. But now, he really felt that the strange dragon was actually born to be one with Lu Ping. Lu Ping looked outside the cage, and saw that the sky and the ground were filled with a thick blue and purple mist. Only the outside of the cage was a thin layer of mist, and it seemed inharmonious with the blue and purple mist that pervaded the surroundings. 2 groups of things formed by the 9 runes surrounded the cage that he was in, faintly discernible in the mist. In the mist, there were a few more groups of things formed by runes, but they were clearly not as close as the 2 groups. And in the mist, Lu Ping could also feel that there were 13 things that were connected to his mind. As long as he could break out of this cage, including the things formed by the runes, all of these things would gather on his body. Lu Ping knew that the blue and purple mist was the Danxia purple mist, and the layer of things that were close to the 9 runes was the pure yang qi that he had obtained from the pure yang soul of the Yingtian sect's pure yang cultivator, Fei Tian Laozu. The things formed by the runes were the divine ability talismans, and the 13 things that were connected to his mind were naturally the life gentian formation. Previously, Lu Ping had used his divine sense to look inside, and saw these things in the core space. But now, when Lu Ping's mind was attached to the strange dragon, he saw these things again, and what followed was a completely new feeling. Lu Ping had never felt so anxious before, so it turned out that this strange dragon was originally one with him. Lu Ping sighed in his heart, and his divine sense began to gather, wanting to return to his body. However, something that scared Lu Ping finally happened. No matter how hard Lu Ping tried, he could no longer separate his divine sense from the strange dragon's body. Lu Ping was very anxious, and only then did he remember that when a cultivator advanced to the Dharma stage, his divine sense would become one with his Dharma. If Lu Ping wanted to return his divine sense, then he had to help this strange dragon break out of the 9 runes cage and successfully advance to the Dharma stage. However, the 9 runes seemed to be unbreakable, and no matter what the strange dragon did, it could not break out of the seal of the 9 runes. Lu Ping's heart became more and more anxious, and he could not help but want to roar in anger. Only then did he remember that he was only a ball of divine sense. How could he roar? However, just as this thought surfaced in his mind, he heard a strange roar suddenly come from his mouth. Lu Ping was stunned. Why was there a roar? Then, Lu Ping suddenly came to a realization. Could it be this strange dragon? Lu Ping was surprised and curiously wanted to roar again, to see what was going on. Why would this Dharma roar? Could it really be alive? However, before Lu Ping could put this idea into action, he suddenly saw that the Danxia purple mist, which was originally calm outside the cage, suddenly boiled after this roar, like a huge wave surging out of the sea, like a tsunami, wave after wave came towards the cage. The layer of pure yang essence also began to shake, and strands of essence were peeled off from it, also gathering in the cage. And at this time, the natal gentian formation that was hidden in the depths of the Danxia purple mist also suddenly began to operate, and the diffusing Danxia purple mist suddenly began to condense, and outside the core space, an endless amount of essence began to seep into the core space, and then replenish the condensing Danxia purple mist. At this moment, Lu Ping's bloodline was like a surging river. The sound of his blood flowing through his veins sounded as if it wanted to annihilate everything in its path. At the foot of Failing Mountain, about half of the purple crystal bees were scared to death when the strange roar sounded. The purple crystal bee king hid in the sea of flowers, shivering. The giant white-fronted tiger crouched on the ground, covering its eyes and ears with its two front paws. The spirit-seeking mouse kept digging deeper into the ground. Behind Lu Ping, the wine cauldron had been knocked over, and the bottom of the cauldron couldn't be seen. Ling Long was hiding somewhere in the cauldron. Outside the heart core, the clouds above the green sail gathered and dispersed. But no matter what, they couldn't form a complete Peng artifact spirit. On the top of Failing Mountain, the huge spiritual pillar was like a ball of dough that was being kneaded at will, constantly changing its shape, but it could not emit even a trace of spiritual energy to the outside of Failing Island. Just like the Danxia purple mist in the core space, the spiritual energy on the top of Failing Mountain also began to condense and condense above Lu Ping's head. Gradually, a strange spiritual energy Jiao dragon that looked exactly the same as the one in the golden core cage in Lu Ping's heart core space appeared above his head, but it was many times bigger. The huge head of the strange dragon seemed to be extremely excited at the moment it was formed. It shook its head and wagged its tail, swimming back and forth on the top of Failing Mountain, then suddenly opened its huge mouth, as if it was going to roar again excitedly. Roar! The roar sounded as the strange spiritual energy dragon opened its mouth, but it was not the strange spiritual energy dragon that was roaring. Like the previous roar, it seemed to come from Lu Ping's body, but it also seemed to come from all directions of Failing Mountain, making it hard to fathom. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.